I'd like to call the meeting of the Quincy City Council Finance Committee to order. At this time, I'm going to read the open meeting law into the record. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Okay, at this time, I'd like the clerk to call the roll.
Councilman Andronico.
Present.
Councilor Kane.
Present.
Councilor Devine.
Present.
Councilor DeBona.
Present.
Councilor Harris. Councilor Leeang. Councilor Mahoney. Councilor McCarthy.
Present.
Chairman Phelan.
Present.
8 members, you have a quorum.
8 members, we have a quorum. Okay, at this time, the first item on the agenda is for a public hearing. So I'd like to declare the public hearing on the city budget open. Are we going to do presentations before? Or no, just the hearing, okay. All right, we're going to do the public hearing at this point. I would ask that anyone looking to speak, step up to the mic, give your name and your address, and also, if you can keep on to the budget. If it's just talk about the budget, that's what we're here to talk about. That is the public hearing. We're gonna allow 5 minutes for any speakers. So, the public hearing is open. So I'd like anyone wishing to speak on the FY 2024 budget to step to the mic, give us your name and address, please.
First off, before you start the clock, Chairman Phelan, I appreciate the chair increasing the time limit to 5 minutes. We're looking at $460 million total spending, and 5 minutes is sort of a bare minimum. In any event, Bill Zamsow, 356 Washington, Quincy. First off, I got to say, the administration's proposed FY24 budget is, well, a joke. For starters, 40% of an almost 400-page document is junk data filler. Specifically, the listing of 45 weeks of actual but variously imperfect expense outlays to date. And these data are per a layout that is not readily comparable with the budget book. They're useless unless you want to spend a lot of time for very little value in your effort. The bigger disgrace, however, is that the administration has yet again failed to include actual spending since the middle of the 2010s. Never have I seen such a consequential budget that does not list actual spending data in years past. Even worse, however, is that the administration has claimed that its proposed spending increase sought is only 8.9%. Has the council forgotten how the FY23 health insurance line was cut by $3 million last December so as to head off a $75 further increase in the average assessed value homeowners tax bill this year? Properly netted this budget revision, the proposed spending for FY24 is actually 9.8% higher than last year, as well as the largest increase of any municipality in the Commonwealth this year, if not also going away in any recent decades. Next, has this budget body also forgotten how last December the administration tapped the stabilization fund, the city's rainy day fund, for over $10 million so as to head off a further $250 average increase on homeowners' tax bills, but it then promised to reimburse half of this drawdown from stabilization from the FY23 free cash once free cash was certified by the DOR. Certification to the tune of $9 million recently happened, or at least that's my understanding. Reimbursement, however, has not. Accordingly, you all should not even be considering the fiscal year 2024 budget until the promised reimbursement of stabilization happens. And as for problems within the administration's budget proposal itself, all one has to do is go to page 15. On this page, the administration claims the city's AA credit rating is the second best credit rating. Reality, AA is the third best credit rating. The administration also claims that the Quincy's current rating is, quote, the highest at any point in the city's recent history, unquote. Reality. Standard & Poor's cut the city's credit rating 2 years ago, with a further cut likely soon enough per my eye. The administration also claims that the administration has the same credit rating as the U.S. government. Reality. The federal government's credit rating is AAA. The top rating, as well as 2 higher than Quincy's. This hat trick of false claims is inexcusable. The administration also presented charts on page 15 and 16 that assert that city debt loads will be going down in future years. So what for the known fact that future debt pops in coming years are not factored into these charts, as well as that these charts assume that the city will not be incurring any more debt in coming years and decades. Bon chance of that, because tonight you're looking at a bond ask for $23 million. These errata are so egregious it should all kick the proposed budget back to the administration for correcting, as well as postpone further consideration of the budget until these and all other falsehoods and mistakes are corrected, even if it might take until next fall. Next up, the administration has made much of the 3% union contracts raises boosting the proposed budget. Reality. Interest rate expense is over, debt service expense is over twice as much higher, and twice as large an increase is baked in FY26 when principal payments on the $475 million POB bond debt commences. At the same time, the administration is proposing that senior administration officials should see raises typically running in the 15 to 20% range, including outlier raises of 25% for the mayor's executive secretary and a 33% raise for his director of operations. 50 more next-tier city employees are slated for 10 to 15% raises. Conversely, over 90% of the rest of the city's employees are looking at only 3% raises this year.
Well, if you could.
Granted, the administration provided a comparable wage study last month. However, it's my understanding that you all had expected this to be the start of discussion, say next fall, rather than used, if not abused, to present a fait accompli via this year's budget.
Excuse me, Bill, could you wrap it up, please? You're at your 5 minutes. You're over, a little over right
I'm
now.
sorry, I couldn't hear you.
You're a little over the 5 minutes now.
Well, I've got about a
Could you
minute to
wrap
go.
up?
Chair, grant me that?
Could you wrap it up, please?
I could wrap it up in a minute. In any event, I call upon this body to take down these raises down to the same 3% as everyone else. We're talking $2 million, close to it. That's a $50 surcharge on every average tax bill next year. And quite frankly, the value isn't there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone wishing to speak on the FY 2024 budget? Please state your name and address.
I'm waiting to get the podium. Stop the clock. No. I don't think I have 5 minutes tonight. I think I've spoken so many times, John Rutherford, 62 Grand Wall Road, that I figured let's mix it up a little bit. Let's try to educate maybe some people on the city council or, you know, one of the hundreds of people that's watching on QATV live right now. Not sure if this is live. If it's not live, anyone who's watching this later on QATV. So my thing about the budget is there's 3 different item numbers: 911 retirement and pensions, 700 debt service, 725 interest on short-term debt. So when Mayor Koch came up here in 2021 and said we need to do the pension obligation bond, our retirement payment that year was $32 million, and our debt service was $50 million. So it was $52 million for the 2 of those obligations that we had to pay. The following year, we only had to pay $7.5 million for retirement and pensions because we did the $475 million pension obligation bond. So that lowered the retirement and pensions really good. But the debt service that year went from 20 to 33, up to 40 million. So it's a savings of 12 million from 2021. Now let's go to 2023 budget. We're at 7.4 million and 43 million. That's 50 million. That's still a savings of 2 million, so that's a savings. Now we're in 2024. Retirement is 8.8 million, and debt service is 51 million. So now we're at $60.4 million. So the $60.4 million, all the savings we did to that debt obligation is pretty much gone. We're now paying more. We've put the money in all different places throughout the city. Some of the places we needed it, some of the places we didn't. Now, one of the reasons why those debt obligations only went up a little bit in those first couple years, because the 2022 payment, we only make one payment every year in this pension obligation bond. That's in December. And in December, we make 2 bond interest payments every year, every 6 months, but principal is only paid back once a month. So every year, we have a giant payment on 12/15 that we have to pay right before Christmas. So our first one was in 2022. We had to pay $4.4 million. In 2023, we had to pay $5.2 million. That would be in the budget that you're approving right now. That's the second half of 2023, which is actually the first half of fiscal year 2024. So next fiscal year, we have to pay another $6 million. So again, not a huge one, but in 2 years, that 6 goes up to $20 million, okay? $26 million. So that's an additional $20 million that we have to add. So we just recently went to market with a $35 million bond. And on that $35 million bond, a couple of the items in there was the $22 million from the $100,000 that you authorized last year, and $11 million from the $40 million that you authorized for the sewer, and then some fire equipment. So that $35 million was enough just to put our general obligation of long-term bond debt that we owe. We owe over $1 billion now. It's a lot of money, okay? And we just shifted money from the pension fund over to the debt fund. So when you look at our assets that are a balance sheet of the city, there's one thing that says liabilities not including debt, and that used to include pension liability, and then there's one that says debt. So the the debt not including pension liability, that went down, but the debt went up. So to me, that's a huge problem of all the debt that we're issuing. I mean, somebody has to pay that back. So, I mean, when I get back to my main thing right here, the whole point was issuing that. So on March 7th, 2022, there was a council order. Bunch of people, Paul Mucci and Councilor Andronico, Councilor Phelan, Councilor Harris, Councilor DeBona, Councilor Liang, Councilor Mahoney. You're all on this about what went on with the $3.5 million that was lost at the pension fund. Okay, so we're now a long time later, no one knows. Well, I can tell you this, there's a report on the PERAC site. If anyone hasn't read it yet, you can go there and read it, and it'll tell you what went on. Basically, what went on is they don't really know. But what's going on with the pension fund right now, that money that you invested, when we invested all that money on December 30th, 2021, which was day one when we invested that money, when Mayor Koch said the other day, we borrowed at the right time. We did borrow at the right time, but we invested at the wrong time. Our assets were $918 million on December 31st, 2021, and 1 year later, our actual real assets were at $790 million. Okay. So that's $128 million, which is gone. Now, that's not all money that was lost. Some of that money, it costs us money that we have to pay the pensioners.
John?
We expect to make money.
You're at your time limit. Can you wrap it up, please?
Okay, well, I mean, the bottom line is that the pension fund went down 10.2% last year, and it ended up costing us more money. And my issue is this with the pension fund, is that if you hadn't have made that deal, instead of putting in $7 million in 2022, you should have put in 33. In 2023, instead of putting in $7 million, you should have put in 36. Instead of putting in $8 million in 2024, you should have been putting in, again, 36. Those 3 years, it's kind of like we weren't paying for the pension fund for the last 3 years. That's $100 million that we haven't put into the pension fund, plus the 10.2% we lost last year. Not to mention the interest on the bonds. And then not to mention, I got severe dry mouth in both of those machines out there to drink water. They both are broken. That's unacceptable, okay? Because
All right.
I went out there, I got the worst dry mouth
Okay,
in the
John,
world.
we will let
Whenever
people
I
know.
speak publicly, it gives me
Thank
dry
you.
mouth, and I'm not sure if that was done on purpose. I'm sort
Okay.
of a conspiracy guy, but I mean, if I had a better drink of water, I could have been more efficient.
I'm sure
with
it
my
wasn't, John.
This happened once when Phelan was running for mayor, when I was at Snug Harbor, when I went to go to the bathroom.
right, John.
None of the things worked. So
Thank
it's been
you.
going on for a long time.
Thank you, John.
We'll blame Paul Hines from the Department
Okay.
of Buildings. Thank you.
All right, we'll bring it up, we'll take it up with him when he comes here. Okay. Anybody else wishing to speak on the FY 2024 budget? I'll say two more times. Anyone wishing to speak on the FY 24 budget? Third and final time, anyone wishing to speak on the FY 2024 budget? I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing. Okay, motion has been made to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye. Okay, public hearing is closed. All right. At this time, I would also like to mention that there were some comments that have been then put onto the record. Some people that sent some written correspondence, all of which have been given to all the councils and put into the record. And those have been added to the record. So just to make that last piece of material. All right. So the hearing's closed. So we're going to go to the next item on the agenda and have Municipal Finance Director Eric Mason come up for a presentation to talk about revenues and where we are and all those kind of good things.
Good evening, council. I do want to apologize in advance. I have a new CGM on, so it might beep, and I'll just shut it off real quick. It measures my blood sugar, so I do apologize in advance if that happens, but I don't think it will. So I'm doing my annual presentation on the revenues for the city of Quincy. We're going to recap 2023, and we're going to look into 2024. We're going to go through some of these analysis and some of these processes that we use to forecast these. So let's kick this off. So, starting in recapping FY 2023, as of today, 97.4% of the tax levy has been collected. We're seeing particularly strong collections in personal property tax. It's at 99% as of today. All this data is as of 5/18/2023. Particularly strong performance is local receipts. Local receipts are like motor vehicle excise tax, meals tax, building permits, investment income. They're sitting at 90.1%. This time last year when I was presenting to the body, it was at 89.6%. So we're relatively in line where we expect to be. We're currently 87, 88% of the way through the year right now. So we're very strongly in line. State aid payments have been timely. There's been no delay to state aid payment, whether it's under Chapter 70 or under the school or under unrestricted aid. It's all been very strong. One thing I do want to talk about, and it's probably visible in your budgets that included the year to date for the general fund, which is the city of Quincy has had the highest investment return on our liquidity. So that's money that's held at banks that we use to fund operational payments at the city of Quincy. Meet her in a few, but our new treasurer, Molly Smith, has been very aggressive and very strong at restructuring our rates and taking advantage of the increase in short-term liquidity holdings. And that's resulted in almost $1.9 million back into the city's coffers that previously was seeing performance in the couple hundred thousands. Yes, is that a factor of the market? Of course, but it's also a factor of strong liquidity management. Not every city experiences this type of growth and investment income. So looking forward, which obviously I think this is the meat, the meat and potatoes of these types of presentations, is looking into FY24 as we ponder the FY24 expense of the budget. We are seeing quite a large slew of major pending developments, and that naturally brings in more permitting fees. Now, part of that caused a underperformance in permit fees so far this year. It's not terribly offline with what it's been in previous years, but it's certainly under what the original forecast would be. But this is what happens with these types of permit fees. They come in waves. And I think we've all seen some of the permits in the downtown and North Quincy and other business districts. Those are large permits which reflect large revenue share to the city of Quincy. Well, we have been seeing record motor vehicle excise tax growth over the last 3 to 5 years. I am more cautious on that. I think it will continue to grow strong, maybe about the 1 to 5% range based on most modeling exercises. But there has been a decline in people purchasing new vehicles and people, keeping the vehicles longer. Naturally, how the state calculates investment or calculates motor vehicle excise tax, that could lead to a slight contraction. With that said, Quincy still has a lot of people moving into it, still has a lot of people buying new vehicles, and it has upper income earners, which does correlate to more likely to buy, more expensive vehicles, which drives up excise tax. I do expect continued return on liquidity investment income, certainly based on the contracts that Treasurer Smith has set up with our banks and that active management style. The city is really reaping benefits from the return on that liquidity, and I don't see it declining. Chairman Powell has been very open about increasing rates and really trying to bleed off some of this inflation we have, and I do expect that to continue to be reflected in our liquidity. Cemetery revenues have increased. That's because of the Pine Hill expansion. I know this body voted on that, is very familiar with that, but it is what's driving it. And unexpectedly, because we don't have any say in how the state decides its revenue picture, but we're seeing a 20% increase in state aid in the city. To echo the mayor's sentiment last week, our partners at the state, Senator Keenan, Representative Mariano, Taki Chan, and Rep. Braziers, they drive that money back to the city. It nets out to about a $10 million increase in state aid, and that's largely focused on Chapter 70 education spending. So the remaining of this presentation, I'm going to talk about how we forecast some of the stuff we're going to see. We're coming out of a recession. We're coming out of a pandemic. There's been talks about a subsequent recession, a post-recession period. But we do model this. Right now, we have a 5 to 7 year look forward. 7 years is about as far as you can model operations the size of the city of Quincy with any sort of confidence. And we do rely very heavily on this product called the Roman Romer tax model. It's by two famed economists, husband and wife pair, who look at how tax changes and inflationary changes affect the ability for municipalities or any municipalities, state government, or federal governments to collect tax revenue. So we include that in our modeling. It's a nonlinear model, so it looks kind of interesting on a piece of paper, but it's well respected and it's well implemented. This type of forecast methodology is agreed upon by S&P, and they often view it very positively that we maintain 5 to 7 years. And this data that we're going to talk about is largely from Federal Reserve Economic Database, In-Plan Modeling, Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the census. So first off, one of the things we're going to cover as we look forward to our revenues is that there's strong evidence that, based on the macroeconomic data that we're seeing, that we should expect continued strong returns. I don't really see some of the pressures, the macroeconomic indicators that put pressure on city revenues. For example, this is one of the models we use where we try and estimate tax revenue. And this is tax revenue across the entire Commonwealth, across the entire country, based on the 10-year Treasury and unemployment. Well, the unemployment rate is falling, and we'll talk about this a little later. The 10-year Treasury is raising, which can put pressure on the ability for municipalities to collect taxes. What we're seeing right here is that the effects are more positive than negative, and we've certainly seen that in our tax collections in this post-pandemic period. And then it's compression versus inversion. Compression's fine. Compression's that natural ebb and flow of the economy. Inversion is something that we don't want to see, and right now there's no evidence of inversion. You can actually see it because both coefficients are negative, so they're not opposites of one another. They're getting close to one another. But we'll be continuous modeling this on a quarterly basis. This is kind of what it looks like over time, and as you can see, we have some stronger indicators post-pandemic than we usually see after a recession. So while there is this cautionary recessionary exercise we should be taking, it's certainly, I think, a more optimistic picture than some of the soothsayers try and say. The other issue is that we're coming out of we're in this interesting period where we see massive rate increases, but we're also seeing a massive decline in unemployment, which is uncharacteristic. The only other time that's happened in modern U.S. history is in 1982, which was stagflation, as we probably all remember. We're currently in a semi-stagflation environment, and we do this modeling. It's called RDD, Regression Discontinuity Design. Wish it looked a little prettier, but CRAN doesn't make any nice tables for those outputs. And what we basically see here is that we see no evidence that there's any long-term effects after these recessionary periods on municipal revenues. So we're now pretty substantially away from the initial contraction, and we're not seeing any of those second band effects. The final one we're going to look at is Boston. What does it mean for the metropolitan statistical area that we exist in, which is Greater Boston? Same thing, tracking interest rates and revenues. We actually see that despite the increase in housing costs, it is flattening off, and that can be seen on this chart up here. There's some flattening off. But despite that, we're still seeing those strong new growth numbers that were covered last time we were in front of the body. Despite the CPI for housing going up, we are seeing that service job CPI is coming down, which that's a pretty elastic market. So as that prices decrease, that actually means there's more work hours. So overall, they're positive to some of the factors we use to really estimate revenue in FY24. We haven't seen that economic contraction indicator. And that's the presentation. I'm more than happy to take any questions on them or any comments.
Okay. On revenues, any councilors? Councilor Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, Eric. Thank you for this presentation. I wish I had gotten it sooner because I got to be really honest with you. Some of these charts that you're going through, particularly like, for example, like the third to last one, when you have like a RDD output table with the estimates and the latent, the bandwidth and observations and standard values. Like, I wish I could like look at this presentation in the 5 minutes we've had it and know exactly what you're talking about. So I would love for you if you could just to summarize essentially from this information that you're presenting to us, how this impacts what we should be considering with revenues for this past year and how that impacts how you're projecting for this coming year. You know that saying on like Reddits and subreddits, like they explain it like I'm 5-bit? If you could do that, that would be very helpful because we're looking at revenues now and I have some questions with where we are from projected values for this past fiscal year. And I also just want to understand how this informs how you're looking at revenues projected for next year.
Yeah, absolutely. So for FY23, revenues are in line. They are exceeding, we're 87% of the way through the year. We've collected over 90% of revenues. That trend's continuing strong. Going into FY24, I do have some cautionary aspects on motor vehicle excise tax. I do think it's going to continue to grow, but not at the 7-8% we normally see. I think it's going to be more 1 to 5%. As we look into FY24, the big thing that drives municipalities' ability to collect revenue is consumption, government's tax consumption, right? Now, I'm going to tell you my bias. I'm an Austrian economist, so I really do think interest rates are very important. And we've been doing this 5 to 7 year model that gets vetted by Standard & Poor's, and they agree that the methodology is strong. So what we do is we continue that methodology step over step. But we just went over a big hurdle, which is we're now in the post-pandemic period. And we're seeing macroeconomic indicators we've never seen before, except in 1982. So what we're doing is we're analyzing those. We're saying, hey, how does that affect stuff? We're using a previous experience that happened and applying it today. And what we're seeing is that in that previous period, for example, the RDD model,
Yes.
what we're seeing is that if you look at that last one, that's double bandwidth. So that's saying, let's look what happens over a longer period of time. And it's not statistically significant. So in other words, that means we don't see a major contraction. We don't see a major hindrance to collecting municipal tax revenue in this post-pandemic, post-recessionary environment. That's good evidence. If that lowest number was statistically significant, we would say, hey, you know what? We should expect a more stagnant ability to collect municipal receipts. And some of the other charts we're not seeing that if you saw 10-year treasury rates and unemployment colliding with each other, that's called inversion. And that would make me really hesitant. I'd say, hey, whoa, we had a revenue picture we had to look at because these two lines, once they hit each other, could cause a recession. What we're actually seeing is that they're just kind of going together. The asymptotic is what we call them. So yeah, it makes me optimistic for FY24, FY25, because we're seeing strong data showing the economy is actually performing fairly strong in metrics that support strong local receipt collection.
Okay, so you're saying that you're still using the same formula we used for the last year to determine revenues for this coming fiscal year?
Yes.
Except for the excise tax and vehicles, you're being a little bit more conservative there?
Yeah. So
Off of the formula?
Yeah, we did go more conservative there.
Okay.
We kept it relatively flat to last year.
Okay, and then just keeping on the chart that you're on right now, when you were talking about the unemployment rate, you kind of went by it a little quickly when you were talking about how that number will dictate also our ability to collect taxes. Could you just go back to that point you were making there and just slow down and walk me through that again?
Yeah, absolutely. Government tax is consumption. Local government tax is what you consume. We do certainly tax property. It's a little different transaction. That's more of like over a 30-year period. Even though it's annual tax, it's a little different. Local receipts and the income we get from the state is based on, at the state level, local receipts, it's based on sales tax, income tax. At the local level, you have meals tax, you have motor vehicle excise tax,
Yep.
for example, consumption tax. So what we're trying to understand is, how do people consume things? Right? As people are more confident in their job and can find more jobs, and those jobs have higher income, they'll consume more. It has a name. It's called marginal propensity of consumption. If I give you $1, how much do you spend? In the U.S., if you give somebody $1, they'll spend about $1.07. In Germany, you give them $1, spend 85 cents and save the 15. We know in this area, people tend to be higher spenders. So as they get more income because they're employed, they're more likely to spend, which means we're more likely to collect local receipts. And there's a secondary nature to this. These are new jobs they're taking, and in economics we call that work switching. And when you work switch, you're actually more likely to have higher income. You're more likely to switch to a job that gives you higher income than the job you had previously. So that is more money that's going to be pushed into the economy. And that's what makes us optimistic for FY24, FY25, and future collections, is that we're seeing data that's strongly correlated to strong consumption.
Okay. Then I have questions then too then. Thank you, by the way, for walking me through that. I have a couple of questions. When I'm looking at the year-to-date budget report for revenues, there are some that are much lower than projected given where we are in the fiscal year, and some that are significantly higher. So again, this is just an explanation process, right? I just want to understand what we're looking at in determining next year's revenue. So for example, bottom lining, all these categories, right? It's, I believe, page 4 for the vessel excise tax. We're looking at to date, and I forget when this is printed, the one that I'm looking at. It was as of May 1st, right? So we're pretty much close to the end of the fiscal year now at this point. So vessel excise tax, currently we're collecting about 40%.
So
Are
this
we
is
going?
vehicle excise tax? or
This is
motor
the
vehicle?
vessel excise tax.
Okay. Yeah, we're at, I recently reran the number at 96.3%. So if you look at the bottom number for excise, for vessel excise tax, we do assume that there's going to be some previous years that get rolled into that year.
Right, but we're currently only collecting, as of May 1st, 40% of what we're projecting, right?
For motor vehicle excise?
For vessel excise. This is on page 4.
Okay, I'm sorry, page 4 for me is.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the revenues. The revenues printout for the
Okay,
city.
I didn't
Not the
see
booklet, I'm
those.
sorry. Yeah, no, we're switching gears now. Oh, you don't have it? Okay.
I apologize that, Council.
No, you're good.
Yeah, it says 39% here. My numbers are slightly different.
Okay.
It could just be how the Munis reports run. My numbers for motor vehicle excise tax are 96.3%, with 95.9% collected in this year. Let's see if that's the reason.
Okay. It says for that, so essentially what I'm trying to say is for that one, there's another one where it's the licensing and permits, the bottom line, we're at 56.9%.
Yes.
For fines and forfeits, we're looking at 55% collected. And then towards the end, total miscellaneous recurring at 58.5%. So I guess for me, it's just, okay, we're again close to the end of the fiscal year, and we're not, close to collecting anywhere near the full 100% of what we're projecting there. So do you take that into consideration when you're looking at those specific items for how low we are? And again, in projecting for next year as well?
Yes, we absolutely do. One of the questions we have is granulation. So we have all these sublines that make up these categories. So I mentioned during the presentation that we have permits that are finalizing. Permits don't move in these like nice cyclical patterns, they're acyclical. So you get a big wave of permits at once. It's usually around this time of year.
Okay.
And then maybe another big wave of permitting. And there's modeling for that. Actually, how you model like Boeing stock is that you model it in these big waves because people don't order airplanes constantly. If we look at, but what we're concerned about is the net overall revenue picture.
Yeah.
And if we look at the net overall revenue picture, we're at about 90%. We're at about 90.1% right now.
Okay.
And it's important to understand which revenues have the highest weight. And right now, that's property tax. Property tax makes up
Gotcha, okay.
74%, and we've collected over 90% of it right as of today.
As of today, wow, okay. All right, and then the only other one I wanted to comment on was the alcohol licenses. We collected 500% over, like, we didn't just collect 100% of what we expected, we collected 400% more than we anticipated. So I'm just curious as to how we got to that number. I mean, it's a good thing, it's a great thing, right? If we collect more money than we were expecting to help bring down, what folks are paying for, that's great. It was astounding to me to see that we collected that much more. I mean, do you know, and if you don't, that's okay.
No,
But I'm curious as to how that happened. Again, not a bad problem to have, right?
It's kind of interesting. We didn't have that many applications for alcohol licenses last year. So when we work with the state on all these, on all this as we do the property tax rate. So I was we talked to the state, and it's like, hey, we didn't collect that much here on local receipts. So we just reduced it dramatically. And then we got a big wave of I don't know if it's necessarily new restaurants or renewals. I'm sure, Council, you'd actually know that a lot better than me. But we got a big wave of these alcohol licenses that had to be renewed or purchased, and that drove up that number.
And that's year over year, right?
It's year over year, correct.
Okay, interesting. All right, thank you, I appreciate it. I, again, just wanted to make sure I understood all of this that we had in front of us. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Councilor Mahoney.
Hi, Eric, how are you? So again, I appreciate the package that you just put before us, but I do have a couple questions. So what you're saying that we're being more conservative because of the market we're heading into? Potentially with the formula, with all of the pieces, with the economy, with the interest rates going up, with the potential of people potential could lose their jobs, could lose their homes, just in general, how much we'd be able to collect, mostly off of our real estate. That's what the real concern is. Plus, we're not going to see those double, potentially the increases in the assessed values too. Is that part of what your formula goes into?
We do talk about conservative budgeting, but what this is looking at is the macroeconomic indicator.
No, I know you're looking at 7 years, but we've been seeing historic rates of assessed values. So for the last 5 or 6 years, every time we're before us, we're waiting to find out what our assessed value is to be able to figure out our base, because our houses have been growing. But the last year, you're seeing a cooling down, and we're a year behind in all of our assessed values of our homes. That's our biggest hit, is the assessed values slowing down and the potential of what that's going to happen in the next couple of years. We're still in a hot market, but the market's cooling. Is that correct?
I don't believe the market's cooling.
You don't think the market's cooling at all? So you
Really, I don't think that. I think there's the increase in the demand for increase in service. We're a service-based economy. The decreased unemployment rate. We have very low inventory in the market right now, but I'm not an assessor.
Yeah, no, but it's part of the biggest asset that we collect revenues off of is what in the city of Quincy?
The tax levy.
Is the tax levy. Okay. So with the state losing $2.2 million since last year, is that a concern of ours?
The state losing?
In the state, it was in the paper just recently that they said that they in the month of April, they were $2.2 million off of what their revenues, they anticipated their revenues were
So
going to be.
that's less than 1/5% of their entire.
So we're not
budget.
concerned about that.
It's not even 0.1% of their entire budget. They do $40 billion
Yeah.
in collections. I'm surprised they can even get to the granulation of $2 million.
Well, it was in the paper, I think it was in the paper today. Mass tax revenues in April fell 2.2 below what the state collected a year ago.
Okay, but 2.2 million against 40 billion.
Yeah, no, I understand.
That's a 1/200th.
No, I know, but if we look at things individually like that, as we're moving these things out and we're talking about, and I do have a question, because when Councilor Yang was talking about 34%, you said you ran a different thing, and it's 96%. I guess I'm not seeing the same thing, but again, this is all what you're talking about here is the next 7 years is what you're
Oh,
predicting.
no, this is all for FY24.
This is all for FY24.
It's just framed within a 7-year context. We look really far out when we do this.
You look
model.
really far out so explain to me again. So when we're looking at this again, we're talking about the fiscal year 2024 impact for the tax for our budget, correct?
Yeah, so this data is contextualized for FY24.
Okay, but then we don't set our tax rate, we don't set any of that until November, December, correct?
No, we don't get assessments done until over the
I understand
summer.
the assessments, but now you're talking about assessments. I'm talking about how you're anticipating your budget. So this is part of what your formula is. So we don't know what the tax rate will be until December, but you're feeling strong that the revenues that we're going to be able to collect in will be that. Okay, so then now going back to some of those revenues, one of the things that I know that we pay for Quincy College's healthcare, correct?
Yes, correct.
But does Quincy College now pay us reimbursement, and Quincy Housing Authority pay us reimbursement for the pension, because we rolled those all in together?
So Quincy Housing, first question, does Quincy College reimburse us for healthcare?
No. I'm asking, well, I think we still pay for their health care, I'm not sure.
We do, Council, you're correct.
So we've lost revenues since we started paying for their health care, because they used to be self-sustaining and paid for it themselves, but we're still paying for it. So that's a hit to our tax base since we took that over. And then the other piece was when we rolled into the pension obligation bond, we had three pieces. We had our pension obligations that we owed for our employees, then we had the Quincy Housing, and then we also had Quincy College. We were supposed to be having a reimbursement from, I believe, Quincy Housing and Quincy College. Have we been receiving those?
Quincy Housing Authority pays theirs directly
To the,
to the retirement board.
okay.
And they have their statements done separately. So they're
Does that go towards the pension obligation bond, or does that go towards?
they have nothing to do with the pension.
You
obligation
didn't
bond.
roll so back when we were talking about that, I thought we rolled the Quincy Housing Authority into that pension obligation
We
bond.
did not.
Okay, but we did
So-
Quincy College.
Yeah, we did for Quincy College because the city has that obligation forever. There's even people from Quincy Hospital who are probably in that pension pool, or any Quincy asset that was organization ever owned by the city. The Housing Authority gets their own basic financial statements done.
So they're not part of the pension obligation bond?
No,
Okay.
they're part of the pension system, but they're not part of the bond itself.
Okay. So, but in the past, before we rolled over that bond, Quincy College used to pay into some of it. So there's a portion of that that's still going to, a portion of the pensions that are still going, that the retirement board still manages, because it's only 50% of the pensions that we bonded, correct?
The other 50% of the pensions?
We bonded $475 million of the unsecured, but then we have the retirement board also invests about $400,000.
They have all the money.
Okay, that's
We
okay.
wrote a check and it went over to the retirement board.
All right, so, but in general, what I'm at, I guess, this is fine, this is fine, but I guess what really, when it comes down to is the management of how we're handling some of the things, the excise tax. So you're saying we're predicting the excise tax levy for motor vehicles is going to be flat, is that what you were saying too?
1 to 5% increase, which is relatively flat. Usually, the last few years, you've seen 8, 12%. Where we've always modeled it lower, we're still seeing those beats. And when you have like a beat year over year over year, it leaks into the modeling. So we just projected to be 1 to 5%. And that's just done so you don't say, hey, I'm going to get an extra $800,000. It's like, no, I think if you look at vehicle consumption in this area, it is fairly
And
stagnant.
we don't see any building permits. Building permits have stayed high too, and we're not seeing those slowing down.
Like I mentioned to Councilor Yang, they're acyclical, so you tend to get them in waves. So we have pending permits right now that would convert into permit fees right now.
And then your investment income, if we could just go over that one more time too.
All right, sorry, let me move to that slide. So this is investment income. It's the money that's held, it's the short-term interest rate you get from the liquidity that's held by the city and banks. So as the 3-year treasury, which is your best short-term, or T-bill, I should say, which is your best short-term indicator for interest, as that accelerates, which you can see on that chart, active management of that liquidity, which is not my office. I can't take credit for this. This is Treasurer Smith. She's done a fantastic job with it. As we actively manage that, we get higher and higher incomes.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Eric.
All set, Counselor?
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else on the budget, on revenues? We're seeing no one. Chair will take a minute of privilege. Eric, you're not out of the hot seat yet,
No problem, Councilor.
okay? Just a couple of questions that I ran through. And if you have your year-to-date budget report, I'm going to be asking you a couple of questions on 7,
So,
page 7. And I don't know if these are just read wrong or something, but they kind of stand out to me. Under cable fees,
yes.
it's a good thing because there's an overage of over $403,000. Isn't that kind of just set in stone what we get from them, or does that depend?
No, it's actually quite interesting. And that actually represents a deficit of $400,000. So we collected more fees. So how it works is, I'm sure you're, as former director of IT, you're probably very familiar with
Yeah.
user fees from Comcast. They pay us. The law changed about 4 years ago, where we now take those as general fund receipts, and then we pay them out as an inverted expense to QATV. And that's based upon QATV or a representative of QATV billing us for it. So we collected a lot of revenue last year, and then they billed us earlier this year for that last 6 months of revenue. So you're seeing that $400,000 right there. It's fairly common. Not a lot of municipalities have this type of public access television. I think all have public access television, but with this much user fee exchange. So the state basically says you create a separate revenue account, allow the money to go into there, and then have them bill you their percentage. I believe we keep 3.5%, they get 1.5% of a 5%
Okay.
user surcharge.
So basically, we're continuing to pay these going to Quincy Access Cable.
Yeah, it used to be a direct check, but they changed
Okay,
that.
yeah, okay, that's different than from when I was here, so.
Oh, it's
Yeah. Okay, then, if you go a little farther down on the police detail line,
yes.
and I bring this up because this has sometimes been a little bit of a bugaboo, where sometimes the collections run kind of far behind. And I'm not saying you pay the police officers, you pay the men and women who do those jobs and everything like that. I have no problem with that, but then we have to collect off them. And that's showing that we're in deficit by $1.8 million, or is that incorrect?
It's reversed. So negative signs mean we've collected the money. Positive integers means we paid out that money.
So where it says actual revenues,
We've collected 1.8 million.
we collected more money.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right.
So a lot of road work. A lot of
Then you've answered that question very well.
Thank you,
Because I
Council.
was just concerned, we had that a couple of years ago, and I just didn't want to see it happen again.
Yeah, it's we actually the police department brought in a new product that helps with managing details.
Mm-hmm.
So it's becoming less and less of a budgetary constraint right now.
Okay,
that's
yeah,
a good
I know in the past, sometimes it has come. That's what raised a red flag with me when I saw it. Some of the revenue accounts, and I think that's what you already said, the building department, they're down.
Yeah, it's a little bit. We have a lot of projects pending right now, but they haven't converted to permit fees yet. It is something that we can collect revenue up until September 30th of the next fiscal year, so we get 1 quarter afterwards. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a bunch of what we call period 13 journal entries for those types of permits as we come to the summer recess. But that's a prediction. That's not
Okay.
in stone.
Yeah, because I'm only seeing them at 47%.
Yeah.
Electrical at 60%. But as you're saying, we still are collecting those fees.
Yes.
Going until September. Okay, so I just, that's actually all I had, just reviewing the numbers and trying to get an answer for them. So thank you, that's very good. I'm glad to hear the police stuff, because I know that was an issue that was up here before. To
certainly
see it
was.
all being taken care of in a good manner and actually being ahead of schedule. I don't think in my years working for the city, I ever saw it that way, so that's very good. Anybody else wishing to speak on the revenues? Okay, if not, do I have a motion to accept the revenue report? Motion has been made, all in favor? Aye. Okay, moving right on, Eric, you can stay right there. Municipal finance,
That's my budget.
okay,
So our municipal finance budget.
okay. 1 second, I'm gonna go to the, excuse me, I'm gonna go to the executive secretary. Chris Walker has a comment.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. Before Eric gets cracking on his budgets and we start going through the rest of the department budgets, I just want to reiterate a little bit what the mayor talked about during the budget presentation and the report relative to the market adjustments for some of the appointed officials that are partially included in this budget. As you go through the departments, you'll note that the increases are reflected from that report based on the recommendations. In some cases, as noted by the mayor last week, those salaries are going to be split into a proposal for 2 years, basically breaking off the increase into 2 separate fiscal years. In some cases, for recommendations for certain positions that were lower than $10,000 or in the $10,000 range, those are settled entirely within this budget proposal. From this body, I certainly remember the conversations early on last year, even into this year, relative to market competition, and that's what this study was based on. We had a very specific incident, but specific case with our tree warden, that clearly the salary that was being offered from the city wasn't enough to keep him here. And this is a future-driven policy. What we're looking at is the ability to keep and attract talent in the future, and that's the basis for this market rate adjustment. And as we go forward with each individual department and how that budget reflects those increases, it'll be Mr. Mason or myself with the council's indulgence if you have questions about specific items in each individual budget, positions in any department that are affected by this. Those questions will be handled by Eric Mason as opposed to having the department head, if it's okay with this body, as opposed to having the department head speak about a salary study that was the purview of the mayor's office and the municipal finance, and something that they didn't have a role in, wouldn't necessarily play a part in terms of how we got to those numbers. Also, from a practical standpoint, it's a little awkward if you're potentially talking about yourself. So for those reasons, if that council's okay with that, Eric will step in to answer any technical, I'm sure the council has a number of them, technical questions relative to the market rate adjustments. With that, I'll hand it back over to you, Mr. Chairman, for Mr. Mason's
All
presentation.
right. Okay. To you, Mr. Mason?
Absolutely. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Chief. So my budget represents a $65,000 increase. That's primarily, actually it's entirely in personal services. There are some movements in my department, but in particular, before I dive into the hard numbers, I have a member of my office who's leaving to go to take over a family business. I know we usually don't talk about names, but he's a very good man who's helped the city for many years, Kevin Trainer, who's the financial analyst position you'll see in there. And I just want to publicly thank him. He's been a huge help to the city, brought huge value, and he'll be sorely missed. So in this budget, that change is reflected. We are zeroing out the financial analyst position, and we are increasing some of the, would be the head clerk staff and the admin secretary. With the shift we're going to do is we're going to move more administrative work. That was part of the financial analyst position. That combines my job and some other people in the office, focus more admin work on a dedicated administrative secretary, which will free up time for myself and some other members of my staff to handle primary financial analysis. As no shock by probably this revenue presentation, I love financial analytics. I'm just a big analytic guy. Some other changes we're seeing in the budget is we're getting rid of our salary wage temp line, and we have a new line called ERP maintenance stipend. ERP is enterprise resource planning, that's Munis. We're noticing that a lot of our overtime and a lot of our salary wage temp was going towards maintaining vital statistics and maintaining certain functions within our ERP. And we thought it'd be best that instead of having that on an ad hoc basis, but to centralize that on responsibilities of people within the department and outside of the department. So that's one change. It's budget, that change from salary wage temp to ERP stipend is neutral. The other raises in here, aside from the compensation analysis, are union raises. And I'm happy to take any questions on it.
Anyone with questions on the municipal finance budget? Anyone with any questions? Council Mahoney.
Which of, in the line items here, are there any union positions in your department?
Oh, yes. The manager of accounts, the business manager, the principal clerk zeroed out, so that's not one anymore. The head clerk and the admin secretary. And I have both QPEA and supervisors unions in my
Okay, so
office.
could you say that again? So manager of accounts, business manager, principal clerk, who else? Sorry.
So principal clerk, but there's nobody in that position right now.
Okay.
That would also be admin secretary. And I'm sorry, Council, I didn't hear you. If you said business manager, they're also in the union?
I said business man, you had manager of accounts, business manager, and I think that's all, right?
Head clerk
Head clerk
and admin secretary.
and admin secretary. Okay. So are they, so I guess the question, I'm going to start with the first question. So the manager of accounts, it looks like they're going from 99,000 to 120,000. Was that a negotiated union contract increase?
So that reflects in the compensation analysis, there was a manager of accounts was one of the positions analyzed. Well, that individual is in the union. Their increase would be about 111,000. It's the ponderance is whether or not that individual is going to remain in the union. Very few cities have their director of accounts in the union. So
But they're in the union now, so whether or not they're going to or not going to, how are you negotiating a contract if it's a union job? How are we increasing that if it's a union job? Is it negotiated?
I would turn that over to the chief of staff.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Counselor, it's a good point. That would have to be negotiated with the union.
Okay, so right now, you have, it was in the salary study, and you're increasing it by $29,000 around, or $20,000 around, $20,000 you're increasing it, but it was not negotiated, is that what you're telling me?
As of this point in time, it has not been negotiated. This is a proposal that the department has put in for this salary to take effect.
So how does that work?
It would need to be negotiated with the union.
How does that work that we're putting it in our budget, but it's not negotiated? Should that not be in the budget and be someplace else while you're
It's
negotiating
a
it? It's just-
6-1, yeah, I mean, it's 6 and 1, half dozen the other, Counselor. If the union doesn't agree, I mean, I don't want to get too far down the road of union negotiations. There has to be a proposal to the union from
Well, I do,
from
because
management?
I do want to get that far down the road, because this is a union job that hasn't been discovered, it hasn't been discussed at this point, hasn't been negotiated. You're including it in this budget line item, but, you know, the point is in the past, when I've actually asked these questions about whether something was union or non-union, you can't touch that line item because it's union. Now, in this particular case, you guys can touch this line item because it's, you want to put the salary line in that line item, where usually what you do is you put a reserve someplace else for potential salary increases for union jobs, but you're putting it in the budget right now. So I'm a little confused by that first piece. And, you know, I do think you have to separate out which jobs are union and which jobs are not union as you're doing these salary increases. And I guess, you know, one of the other questions I have is when we did this presentation for the salary increases, because we're going to get into that, I guess, quicker than I was planning on, we did this first presentation, and I thought we were going to be happy. The conversation that was presented, Mr. Mason, you presented it to the council, and you didn't say it was going to be rolled into this budget. So I think we all thought we were going to be having a little bit more discussions about the salary increases, but instead it's been rolled into the budget, and it's causing some major confusion for me when I'm going through all these things saying, I thought that was a union job, I thought that was a union job, I thought that was a union job, and I'm seeing salary increases. And in some situations, I'm seeing 3% increases. In some situations, I'm seeing above 20% increases through the budget. And it doesn't match up to the package that we went over when we went through the salary increases. So you'd say we would have this conversation now, so I guess I'm trying to follow up on that.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, what's the question, Counselor?
So the question is that we did a salary review. Actually, I'm going to back up for a second. Who paid, where did we pay for that salary review when we did the salary review?
We actually used some ARPA funding for it. 'Cause
Some of what?
We used some ARPA funding for it.
Okay.
So one of the regulations that's, well, the final rule for ARPA includes the analysis to retain staff.
Yeah, that's, okay, so we used ARPA. I just want to know where it was paid for, so thank you. Thank you for giving me the definitions of the review of ARPA money, because there's plenty of things that we didn't have a review for that. So when we did the salary review, and we got this package, and when did you do the salary review, just out of curiosity? When did we start the salary review again?
I think we engaged them in like Q3 or Q4 of calendar.
So when I went back and watched the review of it, it sounds like you started the salary review in spring of 2022?
Yeah, I would say that's probably accurate, yeah.
Yep, and then the resolve came before the city council asking for, because of the unprecedented employee crisis, and we went through and talked about, now therefore be it resolved that the administration conduct a thorough compensation review of all city employees. It was not just non-union city employees, it was all city employees, and report findings and recommendation back to the city council. And I remember that because I had to go back and watch it, and basically I was talking about teachers and DPW workers, and basically, you know, and paraprofessionals, all those types of people, which they did have a review. Those were negotiated reviews that happened for them, and they're all getting 3% increases. And in this particular case, we came back with a review with all the top compensation people that are in this budget right now, mostly department heads, that are getting the increase. And then mixed into it is some union jobs. So, you know, when I was looking at that, I was questioning, like, wow, that's not really what we thought we were getting. I thought we were going to be getting a larger review of that. Compensations across the board.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Counselor, and that process has taken place in some areas. You mentioned the paraprofessionals. There was a market adjustment negotiated in the paraprofessionals contract. There was a market adjustment negotiated in the cafeteria workers contract. There was a market adjustment based on management in this proposal.
Yeah.
There is certain levels of market adjustment that go into collective bargaining to begin with. We say 3%. without getting too far, and of course, we can't get into the detail, but when we say 3%, that's just one piece of collecting and bargaining agreements. In many cases, the units have received what would end up being substantially more than 3% in some cases. But that being said, and Eric can correct me if I'm wrong here, but this process is a continuing process. We were in the middle or beginning those contractual negotiations while this actual study was taking place. My understanding is that the firm will be contracted, continue to be contracted, and we're going to continue to look at salaries across the board for further market rate adjustments.
Okay.
I would also add that within this budget, beyond the department heads, there are a number of administrative level employees that don't have union protection that are included in the market rate analysis.
Yeah, so I did see that, so I do appreciate that. And this by no means is me saying that people don't deserve raises by any means, Mr. Walker. I know that you are very underpaid.
Thank you.
So what I'm saying, though, however, is that when I went through each line item, when I had the chance to go back and review that salary review, there was definitely a disparity in some people's salary increases in comparison to others. There's some people who are getting much larger raises and other people who are getting much lower raises. And I think what you're saying is, we're going to give those lower raises, anything that's $10,000 or less, we're going to give you all of it this year. So you guys, you're going to get a big raise, $10,000. But the people who are going to get the $20,000 or 22% raises and go all the way up to $170, we're going to split that in two this year and next year, phase it in so that it doesn't hurt the taxpayers all that much. But it's pretty big. And it's pretty disparaging. And when you're comparing something like that to a paraprofessional saying, hey, you know what, there are other people who got giant raises in the city of Quincy, like the paraprofessionals, they went to $30. They work 30 hours a week, $30, $36,000 a year. That's what the paraprofessionals make. They're basically making below poverty level at this point. But when we're looking at these salary raises, some of the people who are getting these raises are getting extraordinary jumps and other people are not. And I can actually go through those line items if you want, because I can tell you our human resource director is not getting a very fair jump in wages, unless there's something bigger. But in the book itself, it said she'd be making maybe like 140 at tops. I think she's at 135 here. But the human resource
She
person...
maxes out at 150 under
Yeah,
this,
so-
155.
So, but to be fair, there are other people as well that are also in lower level jobs that you can compare across boards from one department to another that are not getting fair raises. So these are the types of conversations that I would have thought we would anticipate when we would have this conversation, the next round of salary reviews that wouldn't be going into our budget increases this year. I thought we would be having those kind of things so we could make sure that employees in the city of Quincy were getting a fair handshake at the table, because there's no rhyme or reason as to how these things are happening. And when you're looking through that comparison in the chart, when I asked that question, like, I can't really tell, what are we comparing? You said, look at Appendix A. I did. I spent a lot of time going back to Appendix A for each department, checking these things out, and then having to highlight things and say, that's a union job. I understand what you're saying, that you're going to go back and negotiate with those unions, but you shouldn't be doing it in a budget process. It just shouldn't be done like that. It just shouldn't. And, to say that it's okay to do it like that is disingenuous to the process of negotiating in unions, the fair labor or negotiating in a union situation. But at the same time, I really do feel like the way we're looking at this and the way we're putting these salary increases in for this year's budget is preventing us from having the real discussion of whether or not the salary increases that were suggested, if they're fair and equitable across the board, or if they're disparaging to some people throughout our city departments. And I truly believe they are. They are. And in that comparison of saying, if you use paraprofessionals and cafeteria workers, those union negotiations took a year to negotiate. We had a presentation that lasted less than 20 minutes, and we were told we could come back and ask more questions, and 3 weeks later, we're here with it in our budget. And that's not fair. It's not a fair opportunity for us to be able to have those discussions. It's not a fair opportunity for us to actually ask the questions for some of the people who work in our city that have been told that, and I know this for a fact, have been told, well, you know what, you're not going to get that department head, and you don't have as many years' experience as some other people, so we're not going to give you that raise. And honestly, that's not a fair comparison because they're doing that job. That's a disparity in the ability to be able to pay somebody a fair living wage in what they're doing. The job is the exact same, but they're getting paid less than what they should be getting paid. And they don't have a chance to actually have anybody defend or ask those questions for them. So I just think at this point, I won't be able to support the way the raises are going in right now. And I think it should be just a fair cut across the board where you take all the raises out, give everybody a 3% raise, and let's come back and actually have a real honest discussion about the salary raises.
municipal finance budget. Counselor Andronico.
Thank you. Eric, thank you for joining us.
How you doing,
Appreciate your
Councilor
time.
Andronica?
Just going through the budget, I wanted to double confirm some of the things that you mentioned just throughout the discussion. Admin secretary, net new, that person wasn't hired already, and then we're budgeting again.
Nope. The gentleman, the financial analyst, will be leaving around July 1st, June 30th. And yeah, we're just
And then net
hoping
new
to
and we'll
replace it.
advertise and all that.
Put it out.
Okay. And then under head clerk, are we adding a net new position to add a second person?
We had a union upgrade, so somebody who was a principal clerk became a head clerk.
Okay, and that's a full doubling of salary?
Yeah, it's years of experience, and it's on a union table. So we went down one in the principal clerk, and then there was already a head clerk in that position. So now there's a second head clerk.
Okay.
Which is, I know, very confusing. The
No, I
nomenclature is
just
a little
wanted to-
confusing on that. Two head clerks. Yeah.
Gotcha. Just wanted to check with those two items in particular. Those were my questions. Thank you.
Okay, any others? Counselor Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry if I missed this. I couldn't hear you that well, and I was looking at something else in my sheet, so I apologize for being repetitive here. But for the ERP main stipend, it's a new line item for this year for 20,000. What is that?
So we had a line called salary wage temp. That was 20,000, and let's see, where is it? Sorry, yeah, salary wage permanent. That was $21,543 in FY 2023. So we zeroed that one out, and then we increased ERP. We made a new line called ERP maintenance stipend and increased that 20,000. That's essentially what the people who were getting paid out of the salary wage line were doing. They were maintaining our ERP, which is our accounting. It's not just your accounting system, but it's your accounting system, your vital statistic, your document management system. So we're just trying to make that a little more clear in the budget because we don't have any we don't have any temporary workers in my department, and instead we're going to use.
I'm sorry,
that
so
system.
what is it?
What was the salary wage temp line?
No, the ERP, you said it's used for what?
So
You speak a little, I am always told I speak really quickly. You have me beat, all right? So if you could just slow down there. What exactly is it for?
The height of this also is a little rough.
I see I have the opposite problem, so. go
It's
ahead.
so the ERP, which stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, is the brain of our city's financial, everything that's done financially. It's like accounting system on steroids. It's like QuickBooks, but at what you need for a $400 million budget. A lot of the work that was getting paid out of that salary wage temp line was on ERP maintenance. In fact, most of it was on ERP maintenance. So instead, we decided, instead of doing this ad hoc, instead of doing this one-off, we're just going to assign responsibilities, if the body approves this line this way, to the individuals who have been doing it for the last 2 years.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I just need to understand that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Counselor McCarthy.
Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Eric. How are you?
Hey, Council, how you doing?
In regards to the salaries, and I've been in the private sector for 40 years and gone through these comparisons, and you folks, especially department heads and department head staff, have been underpaid. I know that the leap to some people is shocking, but, when I look at the numbers here and, just in your municipal finance area, Eric, I've looked at the other departments also, at least the ones we're going to look at tonight, and it's a $65K swing at the end of the day in regards to the bottom line, if I'm doing my math correct.
Yes, including some.
By eliminating, as Councilor Andronico indicated, the analyst, adding the secretary, and bumping some folks up so that they're in a competitive range. A municipal finance person in the private sector that runs a sizable budget as the city of Quincy is at least 180 with a bonus on top of that. When I look at what you folks go through and all the maneuvers that have to be made with municipal funding in regards to waiting for the state numbers and working other grants and other ways to get funding in. My folks in the private sector would yell at me, but you do a lot more in regards to getting that job done. So I Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve. I can see the increases, especially with the folks that are at the top that support Eric, and that'll be the case as we go through the assessors and the city solicitor and et cetera. But those numbers in most cases, I mean, I have a few questions down the road, but in most cases, what that competitive salary analysis was done for. And I was pretty much aware it was going to show up, not having any meetings or anything, but after that presentation, it was going to show up in this budget. I don't know why it wouldn't. Why would we wait an entire year to make the adjustment that should have been made probably a number of years ago? So I'll put the form of a motion to approve municipal finance.
Okay, motion has been made to approve on the motion. Council Mahoney.
Could I ask you, who's the financial coordinator making $73,250 in your?
The position has been changed, but we don't discuss names.
I'm not asking the name, I'm just asking, like, it's not in your budgets. I'm asking, it's not, so it's, where is it being paid out of?
It's being paid out of diff.
Okay, it's being paid out of diff. What's the raise that that person's getting?
I'm going to check, but I believe they're going up in this year into the $90,000 range.
Okay. I'm going to ask a couple of other questions other than your budget. So, free cash, who does the free cash for the city of Quincy? Who name the title of the person who does it? Is it somebody that does it in-house, or do we do that out-house? Do we have?
CLA.
Pardon me?
We use CLA,
What's that?
Cliff Larson Allen. They're
So we
very-
pay for somebody to do that. Why is it that every time we do free cash for the last 3 or 4 years, that it's coming back as a negative and then we have to resubmit it? If we're paying somebody to do it, why is there not somebody, I'm assuming that you pay somebody to do it and then somebody reviews it before it gets submitted to the state? I would hope.
Yes.
How come for the last 3 years we've had to do resubmittals when we're having somebody else do the work for us?
the
Is there anybody reviewing it?
Yes, the free cash is a negative, not because of some sort of procedural issue.
It
It's-
isn't for other towns. Other towns are able to do it and get it done correctly. They don't have
But
to
it's not
resubmit.
wrong if it's negative.
I'm not saying
fun-
it's consistently inaccurate.
It's not inaccurate. There's delayed receipts that come in after September 30th.
Most of the times, they're bonds.
Yeah, capital deficits, but those receipts are bond sales.
So one of the things that Counselor Phelan said also was that we were running in negatives for police details. Police details seem to be something we run in negatives too, and you just said that we collect actually more money in the revenues for that. How come the police details are in negatives as well for free cash?
So there's a separate fund for police details that are for city details, like, because we do a lot of road projects. So those funds have to be charged somewhere, and they get charged to a 9,000 series fund.
Okay. And then what are the efficiencies that you believe, other than hiring outside contractors to do the work that used to be done in-house, that we're doing currently in-house, other than the 7-year projection that you do? What are the other efficiencies that we're able to show to the taxpayers of the city of Quincy for transparency?
Yeah, absolutely. I think ClearGov is an example. That's financial transparency software that we have. that we maintain.
How do we get to use that? Can I have a password to be able to go in and take a look at
You need a
it?
password. You can go on cleargov.com, Google ClearGov Quincy, and we'll pop up on it.
A view only so that I can look into this budget. Can I take a look at how you created the budget with ClearGov?
In terms of create the budget, we use a zero-based budget. It's next year just rolled over.
What do you do? I'm sorry.
It's zero-based budgeting.
Zero-based
So
budget,
you take
so-
previous years, and then there's administrative
That's
stuff.
not really how ClearGov works, though. ClearGov actually starts from the scratch. So you can't, nobody can actually look at it. How much do you pay for ClearGov?
About $17,000 a year.
$17,000 a year. And you've transferred over all your munis information into ClearGov, and you're able to build your budget off of that?
We don't build our budget off ClearGov. We build it off a program called Gravity.
Off of what?
ClearGov doesn't build budgets. It's financial transparency software.
So what can I see in that ClearGov? That's what I'm
You
asking
can
you.
see every budget line, how much has been expensed.
And who can see it? When can we see it?
It's just public. It's on.
Where's the link to it?
I don't know
Is
if
it
there's
on
a
your
link on our
website?
website, but you can Google ClearGov Quincy and it'll probably pop up.
So how does it pop up if you didn't transfer the munis information into it?
Transfer the munis to ClearGov, and then it's a third party holding it independently.
I understand what ClearGov is, but I actually was in touch with them, and we haven't transferred the munis information into it. They haven't used it at all.
I have emails from them. I was transferring data earlier this week to them, or last week, I should say.
Last week, okay. Okay, so one other question. Has the city ever been certified for GFOA?
Certified for GFOA.
Have we ever applied, or have we ever tried to become GFOA?
I believe GFOA would apply to people like me. I don't know if it applies to the city as a whole.
It's for the budget. It's for the budget. Usually,
No, I'm not even familiar with any city in Massachusetts that does GFOA because we don't use the GASB standard, which is what you would do if you want to be GFOA certified.
yeah, there are cities in Massachusetts that have. All right, so what I'd like to actually make a recommendation for, and I'm going to probably be the only one who does this, or thinks that this is important, but this administration basically said that everybody deserved the same thing, a 3% raise. We did do a salary review. When we got it, we had a 15-minute meeting. There was a lot of questions that were had, and we thought we were going to be having more conversations. I appreciate the fact that some of my colleagues think, what do we need to have more conversations for? Everybody deserves everything here. So I asked the Madam Auditor to put a file together for me, and I basically think everybody should be entitled to that 3% raise as we discuss it, because as I said, there are some union jobs that are getting raises here that we don't know what the steps or levels are, or if they've been negotiated on, and you're not supposed to do that. That's just not how good negotiations work. So when I actually add the 3% raise in and I go across all of the department heads, with the exception of the departments, people who are being paid out of ARPA or DIF, I don't have those because they're not part of our budget. So I'd like to make a suggestion cut of $883,000, $350.16, which is basically all of the raises that have been put into this budget book, and leaving a 3% raise within it. And I'd like to make that in the form of a motion.
You'd like to make it, well, okay. Right now, we have a motion on the floor, so you're adding that to this motion for
I'm asking as an amendment. to the
800,
motion.
was it 830,000?
It was 883,000.
883,000. I just want to.
350.16, and what that will do is it will give everybody a line item increase of 3% throughout this budget book, which would make everybody whole as in the sense of what all other unions negotiated, and it would give us the time to be able to go back and look at those line items individually.
Okay.
And it would give the administration enough time to be able to concur whether or not a union job should be a union job, or if a job should be considered a non-union job, if you want to change the placement of that.
Okay, there is a motion on the floor on the motion. Councilor Andronico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the sentiments of some of my colleagues that, we got the salary reviews a couple weeks ago and haven't had some full discussions about those raises and salary adjustments to, I think, pay people and our workers a fair wage for the difficult jobs that they do have within the city. So I'm not fully comfortable with the first motion made by my colleague, Councilor McCarthy, but at the same time, I'm also not fully comfortable with the motion that's been made by Councilor Mahoney to just say 3% across the board, and we're not going to look at the study that I do think deserves some time. So with that, I would like to see if there's maybe an appetite to pause and not make any rash decisions on the numbers that are before us, and maybe come back at a meeting sometime this week to actually have those conversations about the raises that are in here for union and non-union employees, so that we can make, I think, a smart decision and an informed decision instead of one that potentially, to some of my colleagues and the public, feels rushed. So I'd just like to put that out there as a sentiment and see if any of my other colleagues would, and maybe even the administration might consider that.
Councilor Devine.
I think everyone knows I'm relatively new. I think just over 3 months. So I took the Gallagher report and I read it and I compared it to everything, and I went around, and then I also went and checked other cities and towns to see how they were doing it, because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. So I'm not sure if I made a mistake, but I did notice that there are smaller towns that pay a lot of our commissioners and directors larger salaries. So I'd hate to lose some of the people that we have working here to a smaller town because they're paying more money when we have the ability to pay more. I thought the whole idea behind the Gallagher report was that it was a non-biased, nonpartisan, that they did it privately so that there's nobody to take the numbers. So I'm sorry that we lost Mr. Trainer. It seems like he's doing a good job. He went forward to go somewhere else. I'm nervous that we might lose some qualified people at the same time. $800,000, I know sounds like a lot of money to everybody, but we have 100,000 plus people in the city. I hope I'm not saying anything too wrong, but that's not too much to maintain the level of people. There's multiple people on this list to be raised. And they weren't getting 3% raises the whole time that they were represented by a union. They weren't represented by anyone. So the last, if you want to say 5, 10 years, they've been underpaid. So if you really want to do I don't know if we should look further back then and make sure that we paid them properly since they started. But that's it. That's what I from the Gallagher report, that's what I took. And I appreciate the effort that the Gallagher report went. And compared to what the Gallagher report went with this budget, it seemed right on spot. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, next, Councilor Liang and then Councilor Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to first and foremost thank my counselor, Councilor Andronico, for suggesting that we pause on this to go back and actually get the information we need to make an informed decision, right? I understand that from how I'm looking at this, we started with X, where salaries are, right? We had a presentation from a thorough study that was done and a thorough review that was done about suggestions on where salaries should be, which is Y. And then, Z is what's in front of us. And for me, there's a disconnect on how we have those two considerations coming together to get us to Z. And there are salaries, for me, when I look at the budget book, that aren't just across the board with director positions, right? I'm thinking about other positions within departments that I want to make sure are being considered as well. And my concern with making, while I don't disagree, Counselor, a flat cut across the board to get us to 3% to start from there and have a baseline, my concern is that for me, it doesn't address the issue of, it's not just top-level salaries here. We should be looking at all salaries across the board. And I, again, appreciate my colleague, suggesting that we pause on this to have that larger discussion, because it's not just about those top-line salaries, right? It's every, I think, salary that we have across the board that we need to have considered if we're going to be doing this. And so that's all to say, I'm fully on board with that suggestion, Counselor. And if we can do that, Mr. Chairman, that's the direction I would like to move forward in.
On the motion, Councilor Kane.
Yeah, not much more to say than what my colleagues have already expressed. I think we should put this on hold and not waste any more time. I don't agree with the initial cut, but I think we should discuss the raises as initially presented to us and then further inquire about what Councilor Liang would like to explore.
We got two motions. The first motion was for a cut. We can hold it. I mean, in the past, when motions come in and people want to, you can't hold things. I mean, you don't have to cut it, you can hold it, and we can bring it up at a later meeting.
Is there any budget as presented tonight that doesn't, which budgets don't have raises in them? Because otherwise, let's just come back another time.
Okay. Councilor Walker? I mean, no, Councilor Walker.
Not this year.
Executive Secretary Walker.
Not this year, Mr. Chairman.
No.
There are a number, to the council's question, there are a number, looking at the list tonight, there are a number of departments that are non-salary affected. And I would also add that the fire department is not implicated to any great degree in this. It would be, I believe, the chief is not involved in the salary adjustment, and there might be, it might be the admin in that department. So I guess that would be implicated to some degree. But other than that, they're all implicated. I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if it's the body's wish to go through the budgets with the department heads here, noting that we're going to have a further conversation just on relative to salary compensation, if that might make sense, that if there are other questions unrelated to the market analysis and unrelated to the non-union raises, that we could go through those and still have that subsequent meeting that the councilors wish to have relative just to the market analysis. That's just a thought while the folks are here.
Okay. Mr. President, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want, just for clarifications, as we're on the subject of the budget, as we go back here, we're obviously voting on FY '24. We have '23 in front of us and '22. Were there any raises at all in '21? I know we had the COVID-19 pandemic. Was everybody on a 0%, or how did that year work?
21 into 22 is 0%, I believe, and then after that was 3%.
Okay.
And then 3% into FY '23.
So all workers took a hit on 0%, is that correct? If Chief of Staff, Mayor's Representative, Mr. Walker can clarify that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that's correct, Counsel.
So there was a 0% in that year of the COVID, the initial FY '21, when we had the pandemic in March of '20?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to get that for clarification purposes, that, folks had, you talk about raises, you're talking about, at the end of the day, you're talking about a livelihood. You're talking about people's jobs, their careers, their families. You go a step further beyond this, so you have to be, all of us have regular jobs, right? All have full-time jobs that we have salaries and trying to support our family, and, well, it's the same thing for these particular folks as well. So you have to be very careful when you start to get into people's financial monies. So we'll leave it at that, and I just wanted to get clarification on 2021.
Okay, Council Mahoney.
So when we talk about COVID, there was a 0.3 raise. All the unions took 0 too, so everybody took 0. So during that time, nobody were getting raises, but I appreciate that. And when we're talking about raises and we're talking about a compensation analysis like we're talking, there are many people who work in the city of Quincy that don't work for the city of Quincy, and they may have salaries that they have 0% raises for years as well, unless they have promotions in the private sector. It doesn't always happen that you get 3% raises every year, or if you get any raises. And sometimes you get salary adjustments, but it's not always that you're getting those raises. So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as that as well. I know many people who work in the city of Quincy who work for other areas in the city of Quincy, and they haven't had raises in over 10 years. So, when we're talking, nonprofits sometimes don't have raises. I'm not suggesting by any means that we shouldn't be having the discussion about the salary alignment. What I'm saying is that when we're looking at these things, we're not seeing quite the alignment that was being asked. We've brought a salary review in the last meeting of April, when you had it since last fall. We waited until the last meeting of April, it came before us, and then 2 weeks later, it's in our budget. It wasn't mentioned to us that night. You were working on the budget at that point. Maybe when we did the presentation, what you should have said is, and these salaries will be in your budget books in the next few weeks, so if you have any questions, we could probably schedule those right away. But it's disingenuous to sit here and pretend like, oh, we had one meeting, we showed you the salary review, and it should be here, and you should all be going, oh, watch out, because people are expecting these salaries. We should have had those discussions prior to it going into the budget, because it's really disingenuous. It's not transparent. It is not fair to the taxpayers at home, and it's not fair to the people who have these budget books in front of them that have their names, that they know who they are. I don't know who they are that are asking for that. But again, when I look at some of the line items when we're talking about this, there is a disparity about some of the people's salaries because they don't line up with other people's, and that's the conversation that I think has to happen. And when we talk about the earth science and the tree warden, that tree warden got a $5,000 alignment. I don't think anybody's been kind of running either way in any direction because of that. But somebody that's making, again, there's certain people, and it looks like they're preferred people are getting gigantic raises in the city of Quincy. And some of them deserve it because they really have to go above and beyond compared to other people for what they do. But, I just think that that's something that we have to take into consideration.
Okay, Councilor Yang, and then Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to just, if I could, just reiterate and ask again if we could go with Councilor Andronico's suggestion here. I am concerned that from me, I'm very process-driven, right? Again, we started with X, we have baseline typical, 3% cost of living increases year over year, and then we move on. However, coming into this year's budget cycle, we had a salary review, which I think is necessary given the changes we've seen across the city, right? And then it's being incorporated into this ask. My concern is that if we continue to move forward right now without the presentation to update us and have clarity on process, that there's a lot of platitudes that are driving, I think, for me, the sentiment here tonight, and it cannot be about that when we're looking at salaries and we're looking at reviews that are looking at numbers, right? At the end of the day, this sets the precedent and it sets a process moving forward that will outlive, myself who's sitting here and maybe folks in other positions across the city that this decision impacts. And that being said, I would like to remove the platitudes. I'd like to remove all of that and say we're looking at this as a process. We have a salary, regardless of the position that it is, year over year. If we're looking at cost of living increases, that informs the next year's salary. Okay, but this year is different. And so it seems, again, that there is some disconnect between how we got from, again, baseline salary, cost of living increases, including the salary review, and then looking at the salaries that are being proposed in front of us. All I'm looking for is clarity on that to inform process moving forward. So I want to just, again, use that to support Councilor Andronico's ask here. If we can step back and go to that. I want to just remove all the platitudes that are going on here tonight, because for me, it's not helping us move forward with the process. And this should be about the process.
The only thing I will say, Council, is right now we have a motion to make a cut.
We can move forward here.
I'm more than happy.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I'm more than happy to remove it, but you also then said we can't really discuss any of these budgets because pretty much every budget in here is impacted by it. So I think then this meeting tonight has to be postponed to some other night because every budget in here.
Mr. Chairman, just to answer that question, Council, we have reserve fund, pension, unemployment compensation, Medicare, debt.
Those we can do.
Workers' comp, court judgments, and health insurance that could all be,
That's
that could all be
perfect.
done tonight.
So then that's fine. If we can do those particular ones and we can take every other one off the table. I thought you said the fire department too, because
I did suggest it because, quite frankly, the department head wasn't included as part of the market adjustment. As I was speaking and thinking at the same time, I realized that there's probably the financial manager's position in the fire department, the administrative secretary in the fire department is probably implicated, is most definitely implicated in the salary study. So I kind of had a second thought mid-sentence.
that's okay. Thank you. So I'll remove the motion.
Council Devine.
This question is for Mr. Mason. The Gallagher report, is that online? Is it public
don't-
information?
I'm not sure if it's online. I don't believe so. We haven't posted it online.
I assume it should be, so I'm hoping that they can have it, so people can use that, and everybody has the budget, they can compare that also, so that they have that information, because it's important.
So
Thank
we'll
you.
put it online tomorrow. If it's
Thank you
not
very
already.
much.
All set, Counselor?
Yep.
Chair, just going to take a minute. It seems to me that I know in past deliberations, we've held certain things, and I would hate to not pass. We got the opportunity to go through all these budgets if we just held the parts where the people have raises. I mean, a lot of these things don't have, contractual, different things like that are standard operating procedure till we could get the further information instead of, that way we're going to focus on the salaries. We're not going to come back and do the whole budget all over again while we have those other people here. And I know in the past, this has happened before. I've seen it happen where we just held the raises. We're not cutting them, we're just holding them. And obviously, people have more information they're looking for, and that's what we do. But we don't waste the night while we have everyone here and go through the individual budgets and actually, get into a lot of stuff, like we said, pensions, different things here that have nothing to do with the raises. But even in their regular budgets, there are different items in there. We simply we make one motion and we hold the pay raises. Would that make sense to everyone? Mr. President.
Mr. Chairman, coming into this budget cycle, we've started late. We've got off to a late start. I mean, May 22nd, we've usually up 2 weeks prior to this. We usually come in the beginning of the month, and then we come in with our first at the, maybe a week or so before. We've scrambled around a lot of different dates to try to get even that third day, which has been definitely challenging. I think we should allow every department head that's in here today to come up, present their budget. If there's anybody we can put on hold, maybe we can just have Eric Mason come back at a later date, but at least have their presentation in front of us. They're here tonight. They're sitting out there. They're sitting patiently. And let them come in, do their presentation. If we have to keep a budget on hold, we've done this in the past. We've put holds on certain budgets and they've come back a different night, or we just, that go to the next line item. So I mean, they're here tonight, I don't want to see them
Yeah.
moving around, and then if another night doesn't work, they have to push out another night, and so, that's just a recommendation.
Okay.
I mean,
so
you're
could
the chair.
Could I get in a form of a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to put that in a form of the motion
In
that
a form of a
allow
motion
every,
to basically hold the pay raises? Everyone who has an increase? to
and let
hold the
all
pay-
present.
And then wait for a separate presentation? Does that make sense to council?
So are we talking all pay raises for any staff person across the board? Because again, I want to be considerate about the fact that it's not, for me, it's not just a concern of top level, director level raises we're talking about here. I want to make sure that if we're being thorough and inclusive about this process, that it's every staff position, right? Like, if we're talking about raises across the board, I would want it to be considered a conversation that's had for staff across the board and not, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want it to, for me, I'm not comfortable going into this with a microscope only for the top level positions. Like, for me, that makes me very uncomfortable. Like, shouldn't we also be reviewing salaries for folks who may deserve it, who are not in a director level position, right? So that being the case, I just, again, if I'm going into it with the fine tooth comb, I want to make sure that I'm doing that consideration for everybody who works for the city. Do you know what I mean? I don't feel comfortable doing that and excluding other folks across the city.
Well, the other thing is, some of them, the union raises are contractual, we can't change those anyways. Those are what happens. The only ones we're talking about is the staff positions, everyone who's got a raise outside of the union basic pay raise, because we can't hold the union pay raises because it's contractual, they have them, we can't hold that legally. But we
So
could, we
if that-
could hold all the staff positions that were increased by the study.
If that's the case, then are we going, then just, I guess, through you, Mr. Chairman, to my fellow colleague, is the question here then, or the motion here, to have the conversation for all departments, but there won't be a motion to approve any of the departments that have a proposed raise? We're just getting a presentation.
That is correct.
No, we're gonna hold the whole thing. We've done this.
Oh, I thought
we've
he was
done this
making a
in the
motion
past.
to move forward, so.
We'll move forward to talk, 90% of what's in that budget, there's no reason why we can't go through it tonight, is all I'm saying. We're holding a particular item for everyone in that budget. We're making a general one right across the board.
Okay. I'm not going to hold anything up anymore. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get clarification at this point. I think I'm
Right.
just
So,
confusing
Mr. Chair-
myself, so. it's-
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
all budgetary heads will come in and do their presentation tonight?
Right.
Okay, that's all I would like to do,
Yes.
make sure that each
All right.
But you're
each
not looking
department
for a
has an
vote.
opportunity to come in front of us, we
Well,
have on our
we need a
schedule.
motion to hold that, and we're going to hold it. We could do it I'm saying that we can, I mean, basically, we can do it. We can
Yes,
do what
yeah.
we want to do on that. And we're just holding it. We're not cutting it. It would be different if we were cutting it. We're holding it. And I know in several budgets, over all the years, I've seen several things held. And
yeah.
it seemed like
Oh, yeah, we've done
something
it.
held right across the board, which isn't unusual. I've seen it happen several meetings.
We have done that in the past where folks didn't have information and they had to come back another
Yeah.
night. It's happened
But-
many a times up here.
I'm sorry, then that's where my confusion is. If you're saying that we're holding it and having them come back another night, then why
Well, they have
wouldn't
to
they
come
just?
back. If we're doing the pay raises, and
No, I understand, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I'm not
We're
confused
going-
by your explanation, I'm confused by my colleague's explanation, because you're saying they're here tonight, so let's do the presentations, let's move forward. But if we're not voting on it, don't they have to come back anyway? So why don't we just do that presentation after getting the descriptions that we're looking for the salary increases? And again, you know what, I think I'm
Okay.
spinning myself in
So
circles, so
because-
just do your motion,
okay,
be
let
clear
me
about it.
Let me just try to explain a little bit. Eric Mason is the only person who actually has that salary study information. So it's him that has to answer to us. It's not necessarily each department that has to answer to us. Eric Mason's going to answer to us. So he has to come back and answer to all of us about those questions about budgetary items that are going up for salary increase per person or line item. Is that correct? Is that correct, Mr. Walker? I mean, that's what my
Through you,
perception of it
Mr.
is.
Chairman, yes, I think what the body is trying to suggest is that we do the presentations, we answer questions relative to anything not related to the specific salary market rate adjustments. Those department heads who are here can answer those questions. That means essentially their budget has been covered. with the exception of the salary increases, which, as I discussed earlier, was always going to be handled by Mr. Mason and myself.
That's fine.
So
Yeah.
if the body wishes the department heads to come back, the department heads will come back. That's not an issue. But from an efficiency standpoint, it seems like it makes sense to have the department heads that are here tonight present. And if there are any questions or issues or potential cuts relative to anything outside of the questions that this body has asked relative to the market salary adjustments, that we handle those this evening. We're all here now. It just seems to make sense. And then we just hold everything relative to the market salary adjustments to a later date.
That's fine.
But if, Counselor Mahoney, if you wish that the department heads be here for, if it's, okay.
That's not what I'm suggesting at all. I'm just trying to keep up with the various different conversations. we're
Okay.
having.
I think I got it.
Yeah, so I'll rescind my motion and go with the motion to uphold the review of the revenues and everything, but the raises. I think that's what we're talking, I don't know if that was made as a motion, but I'll make it as a motion also.
Motion on the floor to hold the pay raises. On this, we have like retirement, we have unemployment, Medicare, long-term debt, short-term debt, tax title. There's a bunch of things on here that have nothing to do with the pay raises. And the pay raises come from the mayor and come from the study. That's really what we're looking to study. So I see no reason why we shouldn't move forward. So at this point, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor to hold the pay raises for a later date? All opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it. And those will be all held, and we'll be bringing everyone back on a later date on those. We'll get some reports from municipal finance and from the administration on that. So those are, at this point, held. But we're going to continue to, we have a motion. Anything else on municipal finance? So, what?
He withdrew his motion.
He withdrew his motion, okay.
Move on to reserve.
Okay, so we're going to move on to reserve, okay?
The reserve budget has stayed flat year over year, besides the retraction of the salary rate increase for last, thank you.
Motion is made. Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, moving on to retirement and pensions.
It's our normal cost, the bill we receive every year for the inter-year payment to the pension fund.
Okay? Anyone, a motion is made to approve on the motion. Anyone, Counsel Mahoney?
This is, could you just explain what this one is
It's
again?
normal cost, as I mentioned earlier. Normal cost is the intra-year, so the liability created between during the fiscal year for the pension obligation.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. All in favor? All opposed? Seeing none, the ayes have it. Okay, employee benefits.
This is the unemployment
Employee
compensation.
compensation. Motion to approve. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. Medicare, FICA.
So this is the Medicare reimbursement. It went up with the recommended COLA that Medicare puts out. So it's just about a 3.5%, 3.25% increase year over year.
Motion is made to approve. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye, that passes. Next thing, debt service.
So it's short-term interest is the first one. Sorry, I apologize. Debt service. This is the debt payment for all the capital projects in schools, roads, seawalls, all stuff that's been in front of the body before for approval.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just,
President.
on our long-term debt, little bit more discussion on this, Eric. Overall, we obviously have put in the $100 million road package, which has been great out there in the city. I've been driving around. Anytime I have some free time, I go into every single neighborhood and just check all the streets and see how it's divvied up, and they've been doing a great job out there. We've been waiting a long time. I know we were talking about salaries and all these other things that are going on, and when I first started here, first got elected in 2015 and 2016, we're getting pounded out there in the streets with no sidewalks are done, no roads are done, trees are horrendous, this one's sitting over here, this isn't taken care of, this, and we've kind of like come together here with some pretty sharp department heads on fixing these issues. I mean, the councils on the constituent service part is only good as what we have for some of these department heads. And we've gone out and they've been the communication amongst us and them has been unbelievable. It's like night and day when I first started. It was different. It was challenging. Every day it was challenging. Just to make the phone call up there. You don't know if you're walking on eggshells sometimes. But now, I know I got a few of them on speed dial. And I know my Councilor McCarthy has them on speed dial every day. But they're very responsive, and we're getting things done. So back to the long-term debt. How are we looking in general? We obviously have our Squantum Elementary coming into the pipe, which will get reimbursed quite a bit.
Yeah.
But how are we looking in general? What's the percentage right now in the long-term debt?
For FY '24, general fund supported debt, which is the one that has to do with the basic financial policies, we're at about 6.9%.
Okay.
So we're about 0.6% below the cap, which is a fairly substantial amount of debt service.
What were we previously last year?
I believe we were about 6.7, 6.8.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not much of a jump from last year to this year.
We long-termed, we only have 10% of our debts outstanding is short-term debt.
Yep.
So we took advantage of some low interest rates. So we locked up a
Did
lot
you
of.
do any consolidation of loan before this spiked up?
Yes, we did. We haven't done that in the last couple of quarters because the rates have went up, but we did all
Obviously.
consolidation last year, yes.
Right. So you did some consolidation in last year?
Yes, when
What were the
rates were
rates?
low.
What were you going in at? Like,
2.5, 2.75, and that.
what are we
range.
looking at now if you wouldn't do it right now, but what are you looking at for rates now?
3.5, 3.75.
Really? So it is a little bit up. Okay. Over the years, obviously, we had interest rates that are higher. Over the last few years, the interest rates were a lot lower. So we kind of hit that spot. And I know we went through some bonding in the last few years. Are you still doing, when we bond, going into our bands with the first
We've
year?
been
No
avoiding
more of
those.
that?
Outside diff bonds, outside diff bands, we go directly into bonds.
Direct right into the bond? So right into the 20, are we doing 20s or 30s? What are we doing?
10, 20, 30, depends
10,
on the
20,
lifespan
30s?
of the
Okay.
asset.
This is important, obviously, in general. So our expense went from 43 to 51.6? 8 million 3. Where is the most of it coming from? Okay, interest long-term, okay.
Interest long term,
Interest,
and that's the interest rates
the
went up.
interest rates. That's where it is, okay. Thank you, Mr. Mason, I appreciate it. I just wanted to clarify some of these areas in here. A very important area.
Okay. Anyone else on debt service? Seeing no other discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. All in favor? All opposed? Seeing none? Move on to the next one.
This is interest on the bands, our short-term debt. Same story as the previous budget. I'm happy to answer any questions on it.
Motion has been made to approve. On the motion, Chair will take a minute here. There's obviously an increase in it. Could you explain that?
Well, previously, the risk-free rate has gone up pretty dramatically. The federal fund rate has gone up pretty dramatically. We all see what's going on in the market. You now get treasuries for 5.1%. Last year, treasuries were trading at about 120 basis points, so it's just a macro market.
Okay. Any discussion? Do we have a motion? McCarthy, oh, yes, Counselor, on the motion.
Just on a
Counselor.
quick, so what is making up the short-term debt, just for clarification for this line?
I'm sorry, Councilor.
What's making up the short-term debt just for this line, like,
Oh, short-term debt.
I know it's.
Is
it's-
anything that's banned, that's currently banded right now.
Yeah.
A lot of roadway improvements, a lot of seawalls. Part of the diff is in here, but that'll be transferred out, like we do every year around tax rate setting, we do that. We transfer to the O200 fund. Primarily, the biggest driver right now is public safety, debt, seawall, and roads. I believe roads is dollar per dollar the biggest percentage.
So public safety, seawall, and diff, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. On the motion, all in favor? All opposed, seeing none? I think we're done with you, Eric, finally. Thank you, Eric. The next item is the assessors, with the assessors here. I'll ask Colleen to come up, and actually, if you could just stay on items not pertaining to the pay raises.
Okay, sure. Good evening, counselors. Before I begin presenting the Assessors Department budget for fiscal year 2024, I want to take a moment to thank the staff of the Assessors Department for their hard work and dedication to serving the public. I'd also like to thank each of you for your continued support. This board has had the opportunity to work with each of you, and we thank you for your teamwork in serving the taxpayers of Quincy. This council has supported us with the funding needed to complete the work that we do each and every day, as well as improve customer service and increase public satisfaction of fair taxation. The assessors are responsible for the valuation of 27,000 parcels of real estate, whether residential, commercial, industrial, or personal property. In addition, this department is responsible for administering over 74,000 bills for motor vehicle excise and boat excise. This department oversees all state property tax exemptions, and this year alone, we reviewed over 1,500 applications. The assessors each year schedule the revaluation process to comply with the laws of the Commonwealth to achieve a steady tax base for future fiscal planning. The Assessors Department is constantly in discussion and in service to the public, working daily with the inquiries and concerns of our taxpayers, planners, developers, builders, and real estate professionals. This department is responsible for preparing cases for hearings and defending the fairness of the city's property values before the Massachusetts Appellate Tax Board. Preparing for cases can involve hiring an appraiser to perform an outside appraisal on the subject property, in addition to the many hours spent in preparation for the hearing. We continue to increase data quality through higher levels of auditing and the introduction of methods of collecting property data out in the field. Utilizing advanced technology is crucial for us to keep up with the ever-changing property data as a result of the construction and projects throughout the city. Each year, this department puts out a publication titled Understanding Your Taxes, to assist taxpayers in understanding the taxation process as well as the discussion of other responsibilities that the department oversees. This publication can be found on the homepage of the Assessors Department website. And another thing I'd like to just discuss is we are in the process of being able to accept all state applications online in utilizing fillable forms to eliminate the need for paper, postage, and easier processes for our taxpayers. I respectfully request to each of you, when reading through the Assessors Department budget, you kindly remember that this department is responsible for 75% of the total revenue for the city of Quincy.
Colleen's budget looks like it's a level funded with the exception of the raises. I'll put it on hold. Sorry.
But to approve, yeah, we're going to approve the rest of the budget. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
Yes, Council.
Sure. Colleen, thank you very much. Could you just tell me in your department which one of your, I think I know, but the union people that are in your budget?
Sure. Okay, so the union would basically be head clerk all the way down to, will just be head clerk, assessment supervisor, principal clerk 2, principal clerk 1, and the methodology appraiser would not be in the
Okay.
union.
Thank you. I didn't think so. But I
So
just
the
wanted to
top
make
3 lines and then the bottom line
sure. Yep. Got it. Thank you very
are
much. Appreciate it.
appointed. Okay.
Okay. So we're going to hold the pay raises, which are the actual 4 jobs on the list, and approve the rest of the budget. I have a motion to approve. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Council.
All opposed, seeing none. Okay, thank you, Colleen. Next, the treasurer collector.
Thank you, councilors, for having me. I'm happy to be here and present the budget for the Treasurer Collector Office and answer any additional questions you may have. We've done a lot of work as a department over the last year since I joined to tighten up policies and procedures. Mass General Law really dictates a lot of what we can do, but I think it's important to document that internally. We've worked hard on cross-training and making sure various policies and procedures are clear and written out. On the treasurer side, we have migrated to all new banking partners. We've been able to leverage our balances and earn credits to eliminate banking fees and have even secured an armored car service for our daily cash deposits at no cost. We have done an additional analysis across all of our bank accounts to tighten up security and make sure that all fraud features and account blocks are enabled for all of our accounts. We have approximately 90 accounts held across many different banks, and throughout this banking transition, we went through them with a fine-tooth comb to make sure we're current in our thinking. On the collector side, we've increased our communications to taxpayers regarding delinquent or missing tax payments. We're sending more notices than we previously have in a more timely manner. For example, we just finished collections for FY23 and will begin sending out the delinquency notices in the next few weeks. I'm happy to answer any questions on a couple of the budget increases that I've requested for my department, if you have any.
Any councilors on the budget? Motion is made to approve, and that will include approving everything except for the pay raises at this point. Yes.
Welcome, this is your first budget, right?
It is.
And congratulations, I think.
Yeah, thank you.
So could you tell me, I'm just going to ask for the your union people in your budget.
I am the only non-union person.
You're the only
in my
non-union.
budget.
Okay, so then I'm going to ask through Mr. Walker, I know we're going to be talking about this, is it the same situation happening where some of these people are part of the pay raise, or is no?
No.
I just want to make sure,
I'm
okay.
sorry, can you repeat the question?
I was actually asking Mr. Walker. No, it's okay. I was just asking if there was anybody that was in the, because just making sure that there's no other union people that were being part of the pay raise. Just want to make sure, clarification. I'm all set. Thanks very much, Molly.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, Molly. Oh, now we just you don't leave us, though. You're my favorite item, tax title. Go right ahead.
I have respectfully asked for an increase in the tax title line to account for legal fees that I anticipate incurring over the next fiscal year. We have a number of properties that are in tax title in the city, and it's quite a large receivable in our books. This department hasn't actively worked on tax title properties for quite some time, and the list is quite extensive. We're working on tightening up communication surrounding delinquent taxes. I'd like to get to a place where we're sending more timely notifications. Traditionally, the city has waited the full 3 years as allowed by law to notify delinquent properties. And for some constituents, this can be the first time they're hearing about a tax issue. I think Councilor Andronico, you and I worked together on a really good example of this, and I'd like for my office to be more proactive in notifying residents.
There's a motion to approve. On the motion, the chair is going to, Councilor Mahoney.
I appreciate the proactive approach to this. I was just asking, I'm just going to ask this question because in the Quincy Sun recently we saw like 800 pages. But was that also because of COVID? Was there any reasons maybe during COVID we weren't looking at those things or?
So again, traditionally, this office has waited the full 3 years allowed by law to lien properties. So when I first started, we were just liening the 2019s. I personally find it a little unfair to notify people 3 years later of a tax issue. And so I've been trying to get our department current in our tax liens. So we have, in the last year, worked on tightening up our data. So that was what was recently in the Quincy Sun was fiscal years 20, 21, and 22.
Yeah.
So as of this week or next week, we'll be current with all of our tax liens.
I didn't know if that, because I know in some situations, I know tax liens are different than mortgages, but mortgages were kind of having like forgiveness programs during COVID, so I wasn't sure if we were doing the same thing maybe in the city. It just seems so odd, and I just was looking for clarification, but it doesn't sound like that was the case. It sounds like it was just
Yeah, it's really kind of our effort to start to get current. I'm not aware of any, so again, a lot of what we do is governed by Mass General Law. So I'm not aware of any laws or policies that went into place to extend any taxes or forgiveness.
I just thought it was funny because there was a lot in there.
Yeah.
And, you know, and because there was so much, I was like, ooh, like that's a hefty.
It was certainly a lot of work on my team. And again, I'll give a shout out to my team. They've been fantastic in helping kind of get everything current.
Yep.
And notifying people more timely.
So is your hope with this additional budget to be able to notify people before the 3 years so that they're kind of?
I'd like to notify people over sooner than 3 years. So we've also been working with a consultant, so that's what I used my current tax title budget for, to research each parcel in our tax title list. Some of the tax titles that we have are just bad liens. We've been working very closely with Colleen and her team in the assessor's office on cleaning up some of our data. Some of the tax liens are quite old, and so we've been working with our consultant and our tax title attorney on how best to handle some of these. There's a handful of situations in which the taxes owed are more than the value of the home, and so this really is going to end up falling on the city to pursue action and get it back on the tax roll. So my goal over the next year would be to continue to pursue some of these delinquent tax properties, whether it be in a tax title auction or the city ourselves bringing it to land court.
No, thank you very much. I'm glad to see that you're at the helm of
Council
this
Devine.
because I miss seeing you on the train though.
Thanks.
I just want to say thank you very much. I know your job's hard too, because you have to go to people with those collections sometimes, and it's a difficult job. And I know personally that you've helped some people in my ward. You're very passionate about it and polite and kind, and that's important. So I just want to say thank you from Ward 4, that you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Council Andronico.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to your first budget. I just wanted to say thank you for all of your work behind the scenes and the way that you deal with constituents in a professional manner, and I think with an attitude that lends itself to show that you're willing to work with folks, but you have to do so within the confines of the law. A situation that you had helped out with, I think additional funding really could have helped years ahead of time, and that's just one example of, I know, many throughout the city, so I'll be happy to support this.
Yeah, thank you.
Just a quick, before we take the vote, I just want to say, Molly, I'm very happy that you're taking this aggressively, because this is a great thing, because these properties lead to these derelict properties down the road. And I know a couple of them that you're talking about that are over, that have been a real royal pain. And you've also helped to get one in your own neighborhood taken care of. They put it up for sale, so that's a step in the right direction. But I think being aggressive on this prevents them from becoming a derelict. So I'm fully in support of this. And at this point, any other councilors? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Seeing none? Thank you, Molly.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda, purchasing office. We have our purchasing agent, Catherine Hoban. I gotta correct one thing. I said Hoban because I knew it before she was, okay.
Logan, yeah.
So Catherine Logan, I apologize. Thank you. All right. Motion has been made to approve. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, Catherine. Okay, moving right along. We're going to hit the legal department. And City Solicitor Timmons.
Evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. Typically, when I follow Mrs. Logan, I try to follow her practice of getting up here and getting away quickly. I don't have a lot to say about my budget. Every year, it's pretty static. I have the good fortune of managing a small department, which still taxes my capabilities when it comes to administration. But the only changes And I'm going to skip right through the salary lines, just because I understand what's going on. There's a contracted line, 530303, where the number's gone up a bit. And that's reflective of a pay raise for Mike Maxey, who works in our office. He hasn't had his number hasn't been adjusted for about 5 years. He's an independent contractor and he knows workers' comp, so we're fortunate to have him. He does an excellent job managing the budget. And then if I may, I know occasionally I've been told to not jump around, but the one other item is across the page on page 41 of the workers' comp budget. If you'd like me to stop at this point and take questions on the legal department, I'm happy to.
Stay right with the legal at this point. Any motion has been made to approve, and this is obviously everything but the salary. So, on the motion.
If I could, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know many years ago, when I first came onto the city council, every year, this councilor is no longer with us from Ward 4, Brian Palmucci would come in front. We'd always ask for our own legal representation as the council. Since he's gone, is there by any chance that we can get that? I think he always used to try to earmark $60,000 for legal counsel just for the city council.
No, say that again. You're CIL and we're SEL.
Okay.
So we're gonna have to figure that out.
Okay.
All right? If you want a few Scrivener's errors, then maybe we can work something out, I guess.
Sure. For
That's
many,
what
many
you're
years, he would come in here and we'd have a resolution and we'd bring it forward and we'd try to do it. And
Gotcha.
it hadn't happened for a few years, but I thought I might have just asked during our legal budget. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions on the legal department budget, except for pay raises? Councilor Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could, to that end, now that you bring it up, Councilor DeBona, so for the line for outside counsel, you're asking for, basically, it's level. You're not asking for any more than you had in previous years, but it's at $195,000. And in the past, I think there is only one fiscal year. No, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I think there's 1 year that we've used quite a bit of it, but I'm just looking this year, I think we've only used about 27,000 of it. So what is that line item for, the outside counsel? Because to Councilor DeBona's point, it's not for outside counsel for us up here, right? So what are we using that line item for?
Well, it's somewhat subject to the vagaries of the particular years. Like, we've had some pretty big cases come in, and then we've had some quiet times, too. And there are occasions where, you know, we had one case where we had to hire three different lawyers, because there were police involved in the lawsuit, so a couple of them had to have their own independent counsel, and then the city has to be represented. So it's a little unpredictable, and we found that this number works. You know, just I try to work within that budget. And you know, as I stand here today, I know we have two cases that are percolating that are going to require attention over the coming year. They have to date, and that'll continue.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So you already know that you're going to need to come into this line item for fiscal year '24 for next year.
Pardon?
So you already know, given these two pending cases, that you're going to have to
That's
tap into the
correct.
100.
Right,
Okay,
right.
that's fine, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other discussion? Councilor Mahoney.
Just to carry on into that level, so could you give us an example, without the police, is like an outside counsel, would that be maybe, I think we hired outside counsel for the Long Island Bridge, or did we not?
Yes, we've had outside counsel for that case who had a particular expertise in a phase that ended. It was the local Concom permitting, and then the process that went to the state DEP, and then an administrative appeal to Suffolk Superior Court. So that was one phase that they handled because of a...
That you used in that budget, so it's not necessary, it's not ongoing, that would be something that you've already hired the outside counsel for, and it could be...
I'm having real trouble hearing you, and this isn't working. That's disappointing. I was all excited to have the speaker.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry. Can you say that again? Maybe a little slower?
For that outside counsel, that phase has ended for that. We don't have that outside counsel for the Long Island Bridge anymore.
Yes, they're still in touch with
they're
us
still- okay.
because right now there's a permitting process pending at the Coast Guard. And once that occurs, it's going to trigger MEPA reviews. So we're waiting for some other steps. I know, I've been told that the mayor of Boston said that they're rounding the bend on permitting, but we've not been able to confirm that. And we have some pretty good, contacts at the Coast Guard. And until the Coast Guard acts, there aren't going to be dominoes falling on this one.
Do we also have outside counsel for the Adams Academy? Or is that something we're taking care of in-house?
Which case?
The Adams Academy? That's what the SJC?
No, the Adams Academy is one that I've been handling.
Okay.
And it's, with the eminent domain taking, we're down to just one issue, and that's whether the city is the owner of the land. There's still a component pending. And, we're going to go through that because until we decide that, we can't come up with what the final payment would be to the trustee. So,
What's the
but I've
final?
been handling that one because
What's the final component? Just, what was our finding? What was our finding to go back and appeal?
we took the property by eminent domain, and when we did, we made the pro tanto payment, but it was based on how the city valued the property. And, typically with a property like this, especially its location in Quincy Center, the way the market's working, there's the trustee is looking at a different number. They want more than the city had offered or paid initially. But that's typical in eminent domain for the most part.
They wanted more than $2.5 million? Was it 2?
Yeah, we paid something like that amount, right, yeah.
Because it's priceless.
So what's interesting about that case is the deeds were, the grants came from John Adams back in the 1800s. He deeded the land to the city, and then he deeded money to be put in trust to build the schoolhouse. So the schoolhouse has always been considered separately owned by a trust, but the land is owned by the city. And that's been disputed by the new trustees since the city was removed in 2014.
And at
So-
the SJC. Okay, thank you very much. If we could, if at some point, if we could find out exactly the cost of some of the stuff that's gone in here that's been finished, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, any other councilors? Councilor Harris.
Thank you. I know you can't see me because.
I was looking right at you.
We better see the budget fixed so I have a chair that I fit in, please. Okay. Jim, I'm going to kind of piggyback on Councilor Mahoney, and it was a very good question, but I want to add to that. Obviously, over the last week, there's been some things that have been taking place. One of them, have you discussed, has the administration discussed possibly needing more money, not necessarily with the Long Island Bridge, but the things surrounding it? For instance, the 161-page report that came out from the Office of Inspector General with regards to the former DOJ. And the fact that if you look at page, I believe it was 121 to 125, it discusses the inappropriate leaking of information to the press. And obviously, we were investigated, and obviously, the mayor was in the forefront of that. Has that been discussed, and is this budget going to suffice? Granted, it just happens to be a coincidence that all of a sudden, yesterday on OTR, on WCVB, obviously the bridge has been brought up again. And whether or not this being brought up again obviously brings a little of attention to my constituents, and it should be the whole city of Quincy's, because one way or another, if that bridge was to take place, it would affect traffic in such a way, it would affect, as I've said from day one, it would affect communities throughout the whole city. Diversion of traffic, the traffic coming back as it is, slowly but surely. I see it every day, even traveling into Boston each day, so. But is there enough money in the budget? Have you put enough money in where we're looking at and really being on the aggressive side, I feel that the city should be?
There is. This kind of dovetails with Councilor Liang's question. That's why we have that outside counsel fund set at what we do. I don't foresee right now anything that's going to prompt legal attention going forward. And I hope you'll understand, I'm not going to say too much about the former U.S. attorney. You don't climb into the ring with the U.S. Attorney's office.
Well, obviously, but
I've been dealing with two assistant U.S. attorneys who, I told them I was very puzzled by this investigation. And they've been sincere and relatively forthright about what's happening, but I don't understand it.
It doesn't take, I'm not a lawyer, it doesn't take a lawyer to know, though, it was connected to the Long Island Bridge, and where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's obviously, and I believe it's even bigger, I believe that there's even more scandal that's behind the scenes that obviously, obviously that's just my opinion, but I think there's a lot of people that realize that. They're not worried about an economic opportunity zone that they declared, and all of a sudden, it's going to save Mass and Cass. And as the mayor of Boston said yesterday, it's many, many, many years still before they could even think, even if they got permitted. But are we prepared? My question is, budget-wise, are we prepared for it?
Well, we're certainly fine. I mean, when you say prepared, prepared necessarily implicates a little bit of foreseeability, and I don't know what necessarily might happen. But the reason for the outside counsel budget is to have money if we need help. Attorney Petkin is back there, armed and dangerous. She's ready to roar into the fight. So as things come up, and some of this now may be at a point, I'm very disappointed Boston doesn't communicate better. When Mr. Walker told me what was going on with the mayor of Boston, it's like, why not give a call, talk to us, and but that hasn't been happening here. So we do not know what they're thinking or what they're doing, so it's hard to foresee what's ahead. But I'm sure we'll be fine, and you may recall we had to come before you when we needed money during the initial round of the comps, the Conservation Commission, so we'll do it again. But thank you.
Thank you.
I saw your ears perk up when the Long Island Bridge was mentioned, so I know you'll perk up again if I have to come before the body.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, all set, counsel? Yep, okay. Any other counselors? We got a motion to approve the legal department on the floor, and this is going to include everything but the pay raises. All right, all in favor? All opposed? Hearing none, we'll move on to workman's compensation.
There's one change there, and that's because our third-party administrator, every 3 years, they're up for bid, and there's a line there where you see we've jumped from 61.2 to 92. Well, that's because we have to put it out to bid in June. Well, it's going out to bid now, so the current contract, which ends at June 30, will be able to, step into the mix with the new vendor or the current vendor who holds over. But Mike believes, Mr. Maxey, that is, that we're going to have a little bit of difficulty this time because it's harder to get the type of human resources to do the third-party administration work. So the companies, there's really only one company in the game now, and they have, it's expected their bid will be higher, and this is the projection Mike said should cover us. So that's why that line has gone up. It's the contractual line.
Okay.
say
Any councilors
increased.
on the budget? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve. Motion has been made by Council Harris to approve. All in favor? All opposed? Seeing none? Okay. One more for you, Jim. Court judgments.
Yeah, no change there. We made an adjustment maybe 6 or 8 years ago where we put more money into the settlement account because that gives flexibility to resolve things before they take off and become potentially a bigger judgment. So the system's been working. We're leaving both amounts static and appreciate the support on that.
Okay. All right. So there's a motion on the floor. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, the ayes have it.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Timmons.
Members of the council.
Okay, next up, Human Resources. Thank you, Patty.
Good evening, councilors. I'm happy to be here tonight to present to you the fiscal year '24 Human Resources and Health Insurance budgets. In terms of the fiscal year '24 Human Resources budget, the budget for personal services, contractual, and expenses is $612,000, an increase of about $58,000. Skipping over the salary issues, the only other thing that stands out under that budget is an increase in the enhanced longevity line due to the negotiated agreement to increase the number of supervisory union members who are eligible for the enhanced longevity from 1 to 3 members of that union.
Okay. On Human Resources, motion to approve? And on the motion? Okay, motion has been made to approve on the motion. Counsel Devane and Counsel Mahoney.
The
Fine.
enhanced longevity, is it, do you have multiple people that are retiring shortly? Is that what we're saying?
No, enhanced longevity is a program through the unions where they would receive an increased stipend prior to their years of retirement. So they would sign up on it based upon their seniority within the union. So QPEA members are eligible for it. I believe it's six union members in QPEA each year. And then we've just increased through the union negotiations for the supervisory union from 1 to 3 members eligible for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Counsel Mahoney.
Thank you. Hi, Patty, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. In your line items, do you have any union members that work for you directly? In your package, in your department, do you have any, are they all non-union, or do you have any union members that work for you
They're
directly?
all non-union.
They're all non-union?
Yes.
And then, I know one of your jobs, other than creating, the benefit packages and all the things you do, how many unions do you have to negotiate with throughout this, separate from the school department? I think you have everybody, right?
We have all the city side unions, so I believe that's 10 of them total, 10 or 11 total.
Okay. Thank you, Patty. I will say that when I was looking at your budget and in your raise, and I know we're not going to be talking about that, but I will say that you were one of the people that I was surprised that you weren't getting a more substantial raise. So thank you very much, because you do a lot for the city, and I think you're completely undervalued. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Anybody else on the motion? On the motion? Council President Devane.
Patty, just thank you for all your hard work over the years. I know when we first came in and, all the different things, and I concur with Council Mahoney. You're one that deserves it, so I know we're going to be voting on it later on, but you'll have my support right off the rip, so thank you.
Okay. There's a motion out on the floor. All approved? Motion to approve?
Motion approved, yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none? Thank you. It would just be the the salary lines in that, okay? Next up, health insurance.
The fiscal year '24 budget for health insurance is
Motion has been made to approve. Any discussion on the motion? Counsel Mahoney and Counsel President DeBona next.
So a quick question. Last year in the budget, when we were doing the taxes, we had a $3 million, I think it was $3 million, or roughly, maybe it was $2.9 million cut, and I think it was in the healthcare medical insurance line. And we're going from 52, we cut it by $3 million last year, which would have brought it down to about the 49, and we're going up to 54. Are we over budgeted in that line? I'm just concerned because we had $3 million we were able to cut out of the budget to artificially lower the taxes last year. And I would like to try to make sure that, I'm just asking that question. We're going up $6 million really because we didn't use $3 million this year, and now it's going up it's gone up $5 million total.
I don't believe so, because the health insurance line item for the health insurance is going up to $54 million. So that's a 4% increase over the previous year, which really is reflective of the 4% rate increases that we're seeing for the health insurance rates this year.
Yeah, I guess the reason why I'm asking that question is that $52 million from last year, they cut, and I guess I'm going to be looking, Mr. Mason might be able to explain this because it was his cut that he was taking, the 2.9. I think it was out of 2023's budget that we were taking the $3 million out of it to lower it. Was that true? So you're starting your budget at 52 and you're bringing it up to 54. So it would have been lower, like it's more than 4%, I think.
Yeah, I believe we have enough. I mean, we're pretty stable in terms of enrollment, so there was a small increase in terms of, moving that up. But again, I believe it's the 4% is going to be enough to cover us for the fiscal year.
Okay. Mr. Walker, are you following what I'm saying? In this case, you took $3 million out of the budget last year, artificially lower it, so 52 minus $3 million would be 49, so 4% of 49 is what I would be thinking that we'd be doing. So I guess I'm asking for both of you, just because we cut $3 million out of the healthcare budget last year to artificially lower the taxes. 4% of 49% would be lower, so I just want to make sure I understand, because
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I am following you. It may be a better question for Mr. Mason, who's not here at the moment. So I think what you're suggesting is the percentage increase is probably higher than it would have been, and I think that's a fair point to make. The number is the number, Patty, and the health insurance team that we work with developed a number based upon the rate increases, based upon a number of different factors. Come 6 months into the fiscal year, if there's some flexibility in there, that's when those sorts of decisions can be made on mostly on a one-off or a one-time basis, but this is the number that the professionals believe is the closest we're going to get towards actually going to cost to keep our employees insured and covered this year. Whether that's a 4% increase or a 6 or 7% increase based on last year. The number is based off of what was originally included, not necessarily what we ended up having some savings in.
Okay.
So you're right, but the number is good.
Patty, do you work with outside advisors for the medical insurance when they're giving that number?
Yes, we have Cook and Company as our health insurance or our benefits
So
consultant.
when they cut $2.9 million last year, I guess that's what I'm trying to understand. We cut $2.9 million from your budget last year, even though we're starting your budget in 2023 with the same number that we approved. We cut $3 million out of that budget last year. Did they take that into consideration when they were looking at that?
For this coming fiscal year,
Yeah. Did they start at 49 or did they start at 52?
I believe they started at 52.
Okay. So, and I guess I just want to look at one thing. I certainly don't want to cut, but if we come back next fall and we're artificially lowering the taxes with our health insurance again, this is going to be something that really bothers me, because last year we cut it out of that line. And it was told last year that, I think, I wish Mr. Mason was here, I believe it was told that people weren't using their, I think their optional kind of surgeries or something kind of COVID-related. I think we should be starting this at the 49, not the 52, because we cut $3 million out of it. Otherwise, then this budget's being actually increased by a higher percentage. So, but I'm hesitant to take it out just because I do get concerned that people's health care would be impacted. What would happen if we were to cut that and that line item actually came in over? This would be a Mr. Mason question, but
We would be in deficit and have to ask for an additional appropriation, and would cause a real issue.
have we ever been in deficit in our health insurance line, Patty?
No, I don't believe so.
Have we ever had any overages traditionally at the end of the year in the healthcare line?
That's really a question for Mr. Mason. I think we may have been over a little bit, have a little surplus in the past, but I don't know what the numbers would be for that.
Do we know where Mr. Mason went?
No. He's recharging his robot battery.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Counsel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just looking at this line item, if we were to cut from this, they would have to come back if they needed more appropriation funding. Is that correct? Is that the situation?
Yes.
Yes.
So do we, Patty, this is a question for you. Talking a little bit about the 49.5 million, is there a buffer in there of 2.944? Is there a buffer in there of funding that we can cut?
Well, the budget is based upon the projected number of enrollees and the times the working rate, so the rate of the premium. Plus, the budget includes projections for claims. Really, we've had a good claim year this year,
Yeah.
but if we have high claims, then our rates are going to be high. It's going to cost us. Well, we're self-insured this year, so we pay our claims for claims, so it's high. So we're just projecting some things up. We could have a month where we're, below budget in terms of our claims, but if we have a time where our claims are running high, again, we always have this COVID factor issue that I've been talking about before you for the last several years, that because COVID hit, people weren't getting some of the services, the elective and quite often the necessary services. So we're probably going to see a trickle effect in terms of some of the claims that we're going to see, that the delay of receipt of some services is going to result in higher, more intensive type of claims that we see.
So we're only projecting, we're just trying to see what the claims are going to be,
Right,
okay?
Right.
Yeah, because I'm looking at over the last year, and it looks like between 22 and 23, it's like a $3 million increase, and then it's 23 to 24 going into what we're going into, it's a 2.3 just on the line item of medical insurance. The overall is 3.25 last year and 2.45 this year, which is actually a little lower on both areas. Do you foresee, talking a little bit on that line, I remember when we made the move to go over Blue Cross Blue Shield, we got rid of GIC. It's probably been what, has it been 6 years?
Since 2018.
2018. Remember, we made that move, we saved a significant amount of money, a significant amount of millions of dollars. And then we had a good trend going where it was right around this 2 to 3 million per year. But you're one of those big fives, and I call them big fives because that's where you usually get it. Schools, police, fire, pensions, and then health insurance. Those are usually your top 5 increases every year. You really can't maneuver around it too much. Obviously, we did our pension bond liability, but you're always trying to put more monies in schools, fire, and police. And I'm a big proponent of those big threes. But then there's your pensions, and then your health care, your health insurance. So you fall into that one of 5 big fives, I call them, because that's where you're looking at where people say that, the increase of the budget goes up every year. Yes, if you look at those 5, and that's your biggest percentages of those 5 bigs. Do you foresee us staying within that $2 to $3 million range every year? Obviously, you're dealing with all kinds of things going on in the world today, as we've gone through in the last 3 years. But do you see that trend being that, or do you see it falling off a little bit to get to that $1.5 million increase every year?
It's hard to say, with health insurance, it's very hard to say, again, because we're self-insured and it's based upon claims. But I think for the past several years, we've been around that. I think last year was 2.9, this year we're 2.4, so it seems
so
like
right in
we're
that range,
in
but I
that
just-
point,
yeah.
in that area that we're.
I always dial in when you get to this part of it, because I'm always cognizant of this because it is one of our big fives.
Right.
And we have to be, this is going to be a bigger jump in general. But I think it was a great move 8 years ago. In 2018, we made the move, and I think it's paid off for us, and we're benefiting now. Obviously, we're going into tax rate. When we get into tax rate in December, you have to make a decision on what to do. But you don't want to, it's an area you got to be careful with, because as you said, you don't know what the claims are going to be.
Exactly.
So that's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thank you, Patty.
Okay, do we have a motion on the floor? To Councilor Kane has made a motion. There's a motion on the floor to pass the health insurance budget. All in favor? All opposed? Seeing none, the ayes have it. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have a fire chief, Chief Jackson. Good evening,
Good
Chief.
evening, councilors, council president, Chief of Staff Walker, Councilor Kane, all right. Thank you for having me this evening. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for all your support over the last fiscal year and over the last few fiscal years that I've been the chief. So I'm here to answer any questions about the budget. I think aside from some of the raises, so we have 5 non-uniformed employees, 2 of them are non-union. Aside from that, I think most of the budget is level funded aside from some of the contractual raises. But I'm here to answer whatever questions you might have.
Okay, on the fire budget, there's a motion to approve on the motion. Councilor Liang.
Good evening, Chief. I just wanted to, and I was waiting for this moment too. I knew when I saw you last fall that we were going to see you in front of us for this budget cycle, and I wanted to share with folks an immense thank you and gratitude for what you and your team are doing. So last fall, I had the chance to watch folks go through a training for active shooter
recall,
training.
yeah.
And first, thank you for inviting me to that. But secondly, I remember walking up and seeing you there and being baffled that there were folks from the fire department there, right? I wasn't surprised, obviously, to see the SWAT team members in the police department there, but when I saw fire there and I had talked to you about it, you had mentioned that it was because when there is, God forbid, an active, shooter drill here, folks from your department will be on site right alongside Quincy Police. You were trained on responding, going right in, right? Like right at the beginning, like not waiting, but going right in with SWAT members to help, folks that were, it's so hard to talk about, but, like during the active shooter training, there were folks that were designated as being injured, and folks in the fire department were going right up and having to treat those members that were injured on site when the active shooter still wasn't even found. And, folks in your team had to practice getting folks out as well. And it just was this incredible collaborative effort. And I don't know, I certainly didn't know, right? But I didn't know that folks in the fire department, again, right alongside QPD, go in to respond to active shooter incidents. And so I just wanted to say a huge thank you, obviously.
Thank you. Thank you.
You were, to see it happen in real time, right? Again, just in a drill, of course, but it was tremendous. There was no hesitation from anybody on your team, right?
It was an interesting exercise, it was.
It was incredible. Not for great reasons, but it's just incredible, again, to see the teamwork, right? Again, not hesitating to go right in to respond to something.
Yeah.
And I think it's really clear that you all always go above and beyond in responding to incidents that we, I think, expect. This was not one of them, right? And so to know that this is another incident that you would respond to, folks in your department would respond to without hesitation, would be working alongside other folks on scene too. It's tremendous. And I think folks need to know that you're on the front lines for everything when it comes to responses here in the city.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
Yeah,
we have
can't say your
great
praises enough
counterparts
on
in
it,
the
so.
Quincy Police to work with, and it's been interesting working with them with the active shooter thing, and it's something that you have to do. Unfortunately, it's something you have to drill down into nowadays. But I appreciate you bringing it up. It was a very interesting exercise.
You all did a tremendous job. It was, again, I can go on and on about the impact of seeing that, but bottom line, just thank you, really, to everyone in you and your department.
I'm glad you
So,
were able to make it. It was good to see you there.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Right, thank you. Council President DeBona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief Jackson, thank you for all your hard work over this past, obviously,
Thank you,
year. Like to also recognize, your local President of 792, Tom Bowes in the back there.
Bose, Business Manager Chris Folan for having
Chris
my
Fullen
back
as well.
tonight.
Thank you so much for all your hard work, all the firefighters. I know we were in there a few weeks ago with the beautiful 2 fire trucks out front.
Yeah.
That fluorescent lime, greenish, yellowish, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think have we gotten to a status where we have enough firefighters in the city today? And
Yeah, we're doing very, very well. And you know what? I appreciate you bringing up that truck from Wisconsin. So it's been brought up a couple of times, and just for clarification, so we were jackpot lucky to find that truck. That truck it has a pre-piped waterway. It's 11 feet. It fits into our buildings. It's a very, very, very rare find. So we paid for that out of our normal operating budget. It was $35,000, and the question has come up, if you're so thrilled with that truck for $35,000, why are you paying $1 million for a new engine and $1.5 million for a new ladder? So just to be clear, this is kind of like a stopgap measure here. So while we're waiting for the current ladder one to be built, we picked up a truck from Harwich for $15,000 that was in much better shape than the current ladder one that we were running. This lime green truck from Wisconsin is an outstanding spare, and it's going to serve us well for the next few years as a frontline piece. But technically, this isn't the best way to do business. This is kind of because of COVID. It takes 2.5 years, 3 years to build a truck. These are measures that communities are going to find that they're going to have to take from time to time to pick up a truck kind of as a stopgap measure. It's not a brand-new truck. This isn't going to last us 15, 20 years, but we were jackpot lucky to find it. Thank you, Two Rivers, Wisconsin, for taking such good care of their rigs and
it's
selling
a
that
really
to us
cool
for
truck
a
to
song.
see in
Yeah,
person.
yeah.
It really is.
Yeah,
And,
we were very fortunate to find that truck.
And obviously, we get enough firefighters, and obviously we can get the better response times. And I think you were, I was leaving Cleaner Greener, and I think you had been on the site first with the C Street fire.
Yeah.
And I saw the response, and you were out there, and you were just directing it correctly, and we got on it. But
Yeah.
I could smell some serious oil gas coming out of that.
Yeah,
It was pretty intense.
Yeah, it was interesting to show up first, too, for the first time in a long, long time. But yeah, the response times are going to change significantly, and it's going to take such a huge burden off of Ladder 1 going down that end of the city. That's a long, long ride, and it's probably more than 8 minutes at times, and that's really not, for a big city like this, it's really not acceptable. We can do a lot better, and thanks to the mayor's support and your support, the council's support, we're going to do better, so. Yeah.
Just thank you for everything you guys do. You guys are right there on the forefront, so I appreciate it. I mean, and getting through COVID as well.
Yeah,
We're not fully through it, but
Right.
it's been three
Yeah.
plus years of dealing with all that. So,
Yeah,
thank
well,
you so much, Chief.
Thank you for all the support.
You're welcome.
Councilor Andronico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, thank you for joining us.
Counselor, thank you
to
for
the gentlemen
having me.
in the audience for doing what they do as well. Similar to the council president's question, I know we had actually chatted, I think it was last September, about just the status of Engine 3, Ladder 1, and the procurement process
Yeah.
for a new one. I think he'd gone out to Pennsylvania to
Yep.
meet with some of the engineering department out there.
Yep.
And I think we approved that funding last March. So it's been a little over a year at this point, different ranges for how long it takes to get those, about 800 days now. Just where are we in the procurement process?
We're about a year out right now from taking delivery of the truck.
Gotcha. That's all I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
But, another year, I know it takes a while.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a little slower than we'd like.
It
but,
is, it's such a huge change. Prior to COVID, it was within 300 days, it would be backing into the station now. 800 days, and that's if COVID doesn't shut it down or there isn't some other
right.
misfortune that causes the factory to get shut down, you know?
Sometimes progress takes time, but
Yeah.
I appreciate you joining us.
Yeah,
tonight.
thank you. Thank you very much.
Councilor Mahoney and then
Thank you.
Councilor Devine.
Thank you very much, Chief, and thank you for all that you do. Is it just me, or does it seem like you're being called out more often to more fires? It feels like it, so I just want to say thank you, because I think you just had one up at Raschuti Drive, which was I think everybody, the whole state, they were dropping water from, helicopters and everything. But it just feels like, and then the C Street one as well, it just, I don't know, it feels like in the last year that and I just want to appreciate what you do, because sometimes it doesn't feel like it's that often, but it feels like lately there seems like there's been more, and I don't know if it's just more in tune with it, or?
It's been a busy run. There's an ebb and flow to it, but it has been busy. I appreciate you bringing up, and you've been very gracious in our past talks about saying that you appreciate me being on
Yeah.
24/7, and it just doesn't really stop, but
It
it's.
just feels like it lately, and I don't know, because you're here tonight, and I know Friday night, it was Friday night, wasn't it? that-
Yeah,
And
yeah.
of course, it couldn't have been Saturday when the torrential downpours, but that couldn't have happened, so
Yeah.
that would have saved us a lot of, but there was just so many people coming in for that it's, I don't know how big it was, but it must have been, and you
It
didn't
was about
see
5
it.
or 6 acres, I guess,
Yeah.
which is, the brush fires have been a problem, particularly last year being the driest year on record. We were up at the Blue Hills for like a good 5 or 6 weeks, almost straight last year. It was, but they've become a problem, but we're doing well with them.
Yeah.
You know, these guys do a fantastic job with it. It's a lot of hard work.
And I think you had another one too, not in the C Street house, but another one maybe down in that area too, in Adam Shore, Marymount area for a brush fire potentially.
Yeah, there's been a few already. this
Yeah,
year.
I mean, and I'm sure they happen every year. It just seems that they were happening a lot. And I want to thank you too for your leadership in regards to, finding those apparatuses in this particular
Yeah,
case. I
thank
mean,
you.
obviously, some people are looking online for, used cars, and you might be looking online
Yeah,
for used.
yeah. I can't take credit for it. We have 2 fantastic mechanics that are constantly scouring the nation looking for something that's would fit our bill, which is, it's a rare thing to find, but they did a fantastic job finding that truck. They really did.
But still, they did it and they found it and they brought it to you as a leadership and you brought it to us. So I think that's just showing the ingenuity of what's happening in the city when we are waiting for things, that you're finding these things too. So is it 2 apparatuses, or was it? I just want to clarify. So was it 2 and in total we'll be getting 3, or is it we're getting 2 that were ordered from I can't remember last
We
year.
have 2 on order right now, a new engine 3 and a new ladder 1.
Mm-hmm.
And just recently, we picked up a ladder truck from Two Rivers, Wisconsin for $35,000, and a ladder truck from Harwich for $15,000. So that ladder truck from Harwich is currently serving as our frontline piece ladder 1. The ladder 1 that we were running was about 12 years old, and it had seen its time. So we're using it as a spare right now, but we're looking forward to getting that truck from KME as soon as possible, hopefully like another year.
Which I totally appreciate. Maybe this might be, again, this would be a Mr. Mason question, because I don't think you're involved with how it gets funded, but I think we funded $2.3 million in a bond, is that correct?
Yes, it was. yeah.
And then we used, I think we used maybe $24,000 of COVID money, potentially. Was that true, Mr. Walker?
I forget that.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Council, have to get that number too.
Yeah. I think it was a report in the paper that it was all COVID money, but I believe that we had $2.3 million of bonds, and I think we have about $200,000 left in that bond as well. So I just wanted to bring that up, but I do appreciate so much the fact that the leadership of, like I said, of your team and the people who are working for you, bringing up these opportunities for us, and our ability to be able to turn on a dime to be able to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you for all your support. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Next,
Thank you.
Council Devine.
Yeah, thank you very much, but selfishly for Ward 4, if it takes that long to get the ladder truck, maybe we should order it sooner than later.
We'll get it to you, Andy.
Yeah, so we can order one early, and maybe as soon as we break ground or something like that, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for all that stuff, and it'd be great to see a ladder truck down there in Ward 4 too.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. It was nice to meet you at the press release last week, a couple of weeks ago.
Right, nice to meet you too.
Talked to you out front for a while.
Thank you.
Okay, just the chair will take a moment of privilege. I was on when the ladder trucks were phased out.
Remember you telling me
And I
that?
was very much against it at the time, so to be able to be back here more
Yeah.
than 35 years later and see them come back into service, I think it's long overdue, and I think it's a great thing, and a credit to your staff and the firefighters and the union for carrying the torch and fighting and continue
absolutely.
to get that done. So I couldn't be more happy to vote for this budget, knowing that
Full circle, yeah.
something that was, I thought was wrong at the time has now been fixed. So couldn't be happy to vote for it. And
Thank you to the mayor's office and thank you to the council for all the support. We wouldn't have been able to do it without everybody, so yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a motion on the budget. All in favor? All opposed? Hearing none. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all your
Okay.
support.
We have a final item on the agenda tonight. The Planning Department.
Good evening, Chairman Phelan, and good evening, councilors. The Planning Department works with each and every one of you. I get to see you at our meetings. We get to see you when there are issues in the neighborhoods. But as you know, this budget really speaks to half of our department. The Planning Department that we describe in the City General Fund is basically half of the team. We have another 9 members that are federally funded. The current budgeted positions are 9, and of course, everyone except the director, that would be me, are either a member of the QPEA or the Supervisors Union. The one piece of my budget that also covers the federal employees is overtime. And that's for the events such as, the Office of Healthy Homes will work at different city events, Lunar New Year, Spring Fest, things of that nature. So what we are looking at this year is in the salary line, about a $76,000 increase. And then contractually, we are looking for about a $10,000. So year over year, we're looking for approximately $106,000 increase year over year. The increases that you'll see to get there, as I said, $76,000, $10,000 for contractual, which basically is, we work with different groups, BSC Group, RKG Associates, Woodard and Curran, Granite City Partners, and we also work with the Regional Economic Development Group, which is what is described as our regional compact. And basically, the other piece is we have picked up a MAPC, or Mass Metropolitan Area Planning Council assessment of $20,000. So that is what makes up the increase in the budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have about any budget lines and any thoughts or questions that you might like.
Thank you, Mr. Fatsis. Questions on the budget? Councilor Yang and Councilor Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, guys.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. I wanted to just first and foremost just extend my continued thanks year over year. I know that you've worked obviously really closely with Melissa over the last, we've been doing it 3 years now, 4 years, to really set the precedent and then execute the language access program we have here in the city, which I do want to clarify. You hadn't mentioned it, but it is under contracted, and I'm happy to see that it's continuing to be funded moving forward. I am obviously, again, year over year concerned when that number doesn't, get used to 100%, because it means that, folks aren't taking advantage of this incredible program you put out there. I do want to just note, and I know that our clerk of committees, Ms. Manning, has been sending numerous reminders to folks the last few months to let folks know that they can reach out to your department, all departments across the city, right? So this is half and half, like a thank you, but also like a sort of pitch to everybody tuning in out there that change is hard, right? We hadn't had this done in the past, and you've done a lot of work to really put together, I think, a really strong program that, essentially we're trying to encourage different departments to use, right? To use for interpretation services, live interpretation services, translating materials, to help promote ADA access and compliance across the city for really anything and everything. And so I'm not surprised, right, that it's not being used to its fullest potential yet, because again, change is hard, but I do want to just really from the bottom of my heart say thank you again for really taking that project and, going gangbusters with it, right? You did everything you needed to get us to where we are, to put together the strongest program for our city. But I just want to mention that year over year, the last couple of years, when I'm going to different events outside of the city, more often than not, I hear folks when they talk about the importance of language access, not a single one of those people has said, oh, when we implemented this program, and I've been really proud to be able to say in those instances, hey, Quincy's been doing it, right? Look to us as the model, look to us as the example. And it's an exceptional thing, right? Where folks these days are more and more talking about access to government, access to resources, are talking and using that term language access, but not knowing where to start. You're already 3 years ahead of the game, right? 3 years ahead of that. And again, just sort of wanted to take this opportunity to say, first, thank you. And secondly, just if folks need access to any of these services, please use it from the planning department. You all are incredible for continuing it. And I just, again, it's very special to me and I appreciate it.
Well, I thank you very much. With your help and Melissa's guidance, and obviously Sean's leadership as well, we are seeing new uses, some that are kind of counterintuitive. One of the realities is when you start looking at translation services, you recognize this isn't just a telephonic translation. Sometimes these are medical translations where someone is getting an opportunity to actually have an interpreter speak with their health provider. In other cases, it's document translation. We've had a case where, more than one case, where people that are educated outside this country originally come to this country and they want to take full advantage of the American dream. One of the things that happens is they may walk through the door in a job interview with a resume, and the resume they do pretty well with, but if they received a degree from a foreign university, that foreign university is going to give them that degree in a foreign language. And that's become something new that we've been able to help people with. The word's gotten out that we can help them with that. And in some cases, it doesn't sound like a lot of money. It's about $125 to do that type of work. But that is a license for that individual to really enhance their opportunity for employment. So there are things that we're learning. Now we're about to do the Wollaston program, and we're going to do a full EPA application. And with the new environmental justice requirements, they would like us to have a much more robust process with many more documents that need to be actually posted and be posted in different languages. And many people don't realize how many languages we're actually touching here. You know, I was looking the other day and there was some Haitian, obviously different Asian dialects, but, you know, Eastern Europe dialects. We're really starting to touch. One of the problems is a lot of people, again, are not fully aware of these processes or these things. That's why each and every one of them council members, and you've all been good getting folks to reach out to us. So we're moving in the right direction. It's definitely growing. And we're very satisfied, you know, with the people that we're helping. We haven't turned anybody away. And I expect this to grow exponentially as we go forward. So thank you again for your leadership and for getting the ball rolling. And we're really pretty happy with what's going on, and things are growing. So that's a good comment to make. So thank you.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for the update. Like I said, you all are really setting the precedent, not just for us in the future of the city, but really across the state where folks are looking to this program. You're setting that standard. So really,
We're
thank
getting
you.
calls from other communities.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I've been
aware.
touting it
And
to
they're
folks, and they
saying-
talk about wanting to do it, and they don't know how. I'm like, talk to
It's
Quincy.
not- Yeah, not unlike us. We called a number of communities to find out what the budget should be. You know, we, like I said, we have not run out of budget on this.
Yep.
If anything, you know, we're encumbered up to a larger number, but we're moving along. So we're making progress in this area. So
Great job. Thank you so much.
thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Counselor Mahoney.
Thank you. Hi, Jim.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Great.
Could you just tell me, I think you said this, but I might have missed it when you were saying it. In your department, how many union, just so I can identify them?
18.
18?
And I'm, well, actually, 17. I'm number 18.
Okay, and you don't know which ones they are, is that what you're saying?
All of them.
So everybody but you?
Everybody but me. Rob Stevens, who's the deputy director, is also a union member.
Okay.
Supervisors union.
All right. All All right, and then we just went over the contracted piece, so I appreciate Council Lanning explaining that, because it looks like it's only 65% encumbered, but I'm sure it will be fully encumbered by the end of the year. And then, and because it's for language-based, it looks like you're going up about 10,000 for that. Is that more than just it's more than just that service, though, correct?
The 10,000, yeah, this covers all of those services. The 10,000 is to help us just, we budget it pretty solidly, and I think the 10,000 was just something to help us with Wollaston. Wollaston seems to gonna be a heavy lift with as far as all the permitting. There's a lot of EPA permitting and work that has to be done in that area also when it comes down to the draining of Wollaston. It sounds funny, but it's a puddle, and we got to find a way to get water out of that interior area so that we can just make it a better place for people to build and live. So,
Sort of the Wollaston, like the URDP area in the Wollaston?
yes, the URDP area, yes.
Okay, and then, just out of curiosity, in that contractual line, it looks like there was a transfer of about $83,000 into that line. What was that?
$83,000 into the contractual line?
Yeah.
I'd have to look at that. I don't know, is the auditor aware of what that? Okay, thank you.
Are you talking about line that ends in 530303, Counselor?
I am.
Okay, so there was, what that is, there was $95,000. That was prior year encumbrances that we carried in from fiscal '22 into fiscal '23.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
That was prior year encumbrances that we
Okay.
carried from fiscal year '22 into fiscal year '23.
And I believe that was language access.
And then
Billings.
I'm going to assume that we have expended most of it, if not all of it. I can look and see.
Yeah, it looks like you have 167,000 left, but I don't know when this was printed. It says as of 5/19, so, okay. And then the other question that I had was for dues and subscriptions. So dues and subscriptions, you're going up to 24,000, and when
Yes.
I'm looking at that line, it looks like
So the 20,000 is the annual assessment that we're going to receive from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. That was what I was speaking to.
Okay.
That is, since it's a planning function, it is, and we work with them very closely.
Is that something you do every year, or is it something that's?
This is something that they are proceeding with. It's every year. It's the mayor. There's some, as a go forward, it will be in every year.
Okay. And then, do you know if there's any other employees reporting to your department that are coming from any other budgets?
Yes, I believe there are two that are coming to me on two other lines, Mr. Tramontosi and Mr. McDonald, coming from two other budgets. One is DIF and one is ARPA.
And are they considered union, or are they considered,
They are not considered union.
are they consultants, or are they employees of the city?
I think they are, I think well, I couldn't really answer as to what they are. I know that they both are. I know their function, but I'm
Okay.
not quite sure what the
So the reason why I'm asking that is I want to make sure we're capturing that as we're reviewing the salary reviews, and I'm assuming that they're employees of the city, and that will be considered as well, because they're not in the budget.
Yes.
They're kind of, well, the ARPA, is ARPA, so this is a question for the auditor, is ARPA ending in 2024, or is it 2023 that they can expend money out of until?
I'm not sure, Counselor. I think they can expect, we've already received, I believe we've received everything that we have out of the federal money. So I believe they can spend that down because we've already received that.
Yeah, I think the last time I looked at that, though, the $46 million in the salaries, we were pretty tight against that, so I'm imagining those salaries are going to have to eventually move.
Correct.
So
They
we
will-
might
they-
want to look
they
at that,
will.
too.
Yeah, they will have to do that.
I mean, we would know that if we had that presented, but we have to look at an Excel spreadsheet to be able to figure that out. I'm just concerned, because I think when I'm looking at that, it looks like it's extending out further than 2023, but I don't think we have any more opera money, so I'd be concerned about,
So the city can spend up to that $46 million, and then obviously, once that money is expended, then at that time, if there were employees being charged to that line, I can't speak for the administration, but you'd have to find another funding source for them, whether it be the general fund budget or another line item.
so maybe we might want to review that as well as we're reviewing these salary adjustments, as also the funding sources for some of these things, because I believe the last time I looked at it, it looked like it was dwindling down. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Do I have a motion to approve the planning budget? Councilor Kane made a motion to approve the planning budget. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Seeing none? Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good night.
This, yes.
Adjourn or anything? Mr. Chairman, if I could, I know we talked about putting the, a placeholding on the salary adjustment study and having a discussion about it. If we could I make a motion to amend Tuesday's meeting to allow it to be on the front end of that meeting before we get into education and the police? Is that okay?
Well, that would depend if they, I guess, maybe it would be a question for the administration, if they can have all this stuff ready.
Okay, because we're going to get into this situation that we did tonight with certain department heads, or we can't vote on that, and then how long are we going to wait to?
I mean, I was also thinking we could do it at we're going to be having the CIP at the council meeting, before the council meeting. We could
Even better.
even do it then.
Even better.
I just don't know if they're going to have time with all the to get it ready.
Oh,
I don't know.
the CIP would be actually, that meeting is actually after this date, the
Right.
30th.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's still.
So it's after all
And that
this.
still leaves us the second council meeting after that.
Okay.
In that week to do something if we had to.
All right. All right, I just, okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Okay, just to let everyone know, we have, we're going to be meeting next Tuesday. You should all have the list. We'll be meeting Tuesday, May 30th, and also Wednesday, May 31st. The CIP in that, is that the 15th, Jen? The 12th? We're going to be meeting on the 12th. Before the council meeting, we'll be doing the CIP at that point. So any of these other issues, if they come up, we can add in their other dates. We don't have, the last council meeting isn't until the 20th. So we have till then to act on the budget, so there's time before then to do it. Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll be in communication if anything changed. All right, call the motion to adjourn.